Chapter 425. Classmates B0s and Vel. The Gu family had been busy since early in the morning. They had cleaned everything inside and out. Even Zhang Jia, Zhang Yu, and Zheng Lu from the Zhang family next door ran over to help. Although Yunshu went to school in the county city, he still played with his good friends every day after school. Especially since the three Zheng siblings did not have the chance to read and write, Yunshu would teach them every day when he came back. Now that they had learned a lot of words, Madame Dong was overjoyed. She wanted to work harder and earn more money. Perhaps she could send her children to school. She did not think of asking them to take the elementary scholar examination to become a high official. She just felt that it was always good for children to be able to read. Didn't everybody see that even the servants of the Gu family were learning? Tong En was the best and fastest at learning, so he became the manager of the workshop. It could be seen that being literate would definitely be more promising than being illiterate in the future. As Gu Yunshu's friends, they naturally had to come and help him on his birthday. Gu Yundong was also very happy. Early in the morning, she followed Father Tong to send the two children to school. Then, she personally went to the market to buy groceries. Yunshu only had 16 classmates in total. Gu Yundong had thought about finding more carriages to transport them. However, she was rejected. Which of the classmates did not have a carriage? Lu Yi asked his coachman to stop the carriage at the school gate and wait for everyone to finish school. 2 carriages were indeed enough. All of them were little kids and were not big. Gu Yundong swept through the county before returning with half a carriage full of things in satisfaction. She had asked Yunshu what he wanted to eat for his birthday. The little guy happily said that he wanted to eat longevity noodles and boiled eggs. Gu Yundong's heart ached when she heard that. These were very ordinary things, but Gu Yunshu had never eaten them during his birthday before, so he was concerned. Gu Yundong did not ask him anything else. She had already drawn up a recipe in her heart. She knew how to make cakes, but there were too many people. She might have to make 2 big cakes. For this reason, she had asked around 2 days in advance to find out where cows could produce milk. When she got home, she pulled Shao Qingyuan over as a coolie and handed him a big bowl of egg whites and white sugar. She smiled and said, "It's time to test your hand speed. Stir it until it turns into white cream." Shao Qingyuan was a little stunned. Cream? What was that? But whatever Gu Yundong asked him to do, he would do it. It was only when the egg white slowly turned into a white cotton-like shape that Shao Qingyuan was shocked. It turned out that after stirring the egg whites for 15 minutes, it would become like this. His eyes gradually lit up as he looked at Gu Yundong. He felt that she would surprise him from time to time. The Gu family was busy. When the school knew that Gu Yunshu was going to invite everyone to his house for his birthday celebration, Qin Wanqing simply let them leave school 2 hours early. Seeing the students get into the carriage one by one, Qin Wanqing actually had the urge to follow them. However, he thought that he was their teacher and would make these students uncomfortable if he went, so he dismissed the idea. After all, he still had to protect his image. When he faced Gu Yundong, he was easily irritable. The 2 carriages entered Yongfu village one after another. Everyone had agreed in advance that they could not make a fuss, and they had to remain calm and low-key after entering the village. However, it was their first time here after all. They still lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked outside. Yongfu village had changed a lot in the past 6 months, but most of the houses still looked very dilapidated. Chapter 426. Stunned Schoolmates B0s and Vel. Seeing this, everyone pitied Gu Yunshu even more. However, before they reached the Gu residence, Yu couldn't help but ask, "Yunshu, where exactly is your home?" "It's at the foot of the mountain. Let's go further in. We'll be there soon." Gu Yunshu could not help but sway when he thought about how he would be able to eat longevity noodles soon. Big Sister said that she had personally made longevity noodles for him to eat. It would definitely be a delicacy. At the foot of the mountain, even people like Gao Chengying, who also lived in the countryside, could not help but pity him. The foot of the mountain was the worst position in the village. The houses of the poorest families in their village were all at the foot of the mountain. Gu Yunshu did not see their expressions at all. He was still imagining his longevity noodles. Finally, the carriage slowly came to a stop. The people in the carriage looked at each other. When they saw Yunshu get out of the carriage, they stepped off the stools one by one. Then, they widened their eyes and looked at the green brick house in front of them in shock. How could such a house appear in the village? And it was at the foot of the mountain? Could this be Yunshu's house? No, everyone shook their heads decisively. They looked left and right and saw an identical green brick tiled house, as well as the farmyard beside it. It seemed that this was Yunshu's house. It looked fine and not very shabby. They were about to walk towards the Zhang family's courtyard. Unexpectedly, a small figure suddenly ran out of the green brick house and rushed towards them. Second brother, cousin. The young lady hugged Yunshu and raised her flour-covered hand to wipe Yunshu's face. Before he could react, he immediately ran back. Yunshu was speechless. His younger sister was becoming more and more mischievous. He wiped his face helplessly with a handkerchief before turning around. When he saw everyone's stunned expressions, he was instantly confused. What's wrong? Wasn't it just flour that his sister rubbed on him? Why did it seem like they had seen something strange? Or was it that they were all mesmerized by their little sister's cute appearance? That won't do. My little sister is still young. How can these people be so dirty? Yunshu pulled a long face. Just as he was about to educate them seriously, he heard Zhang laugh and say, "Let's go. It's inappropriate to stand at the door. There are people watching us." He was the first to react. He knew it. Yunshu's family background was definitely not bad. Yunshu remembered that she was the host and quickly brought everyone in. One by one, the children followed behind her in a daze. It was not until they stepped into the house that they suddenly came back to their senses. "Yunshu, is this your house?" "Yes." Yunshu nodded. But didn't you say that your family is poor?" "Yes, I'm very poor. My family is very poor. I've only been to a few restaurants." "Didn't you say you've never eaten longevity noodles before?" "Yes, in the past my grandmother didn't let me eat it. However, we escaped and came here. Now, the one in charge is my elder sister. My elder sister said that she would cook noodles for me. You guys should eat less later. Go eat meat. Don't eat my noodles." Everyone was speechless. Why did they feel like they had been tricked? They were furious and wanted to criticize him, but they realized that everything seemed to be their imagination. No, Yunshu's perception of poverty was untraditional. Chapter 427. Yunshu's Toy B0s and Vel. The little kids felt that they should properly teach him what it meant to be truly poor. They had only seen poor people pretending to be rich, but they had never seen anyone living in a green brick house and using servants say that they had to work hard to earn 10 copper coins. However, as soon as they walked into the courtyard, they could not help but be stunned by the scenery inside. There were many lanterns hanging under the corridor. There were swings in the front yard, trellises, date trees, and pomegranate trees. There were beautiful birds folded with colored paper in the corridor, frogs, butterflies, and all kinds of small animals. Wow, so beautiful! Are these flowers? They're folded with paper. They look like flowers. Smells good. I know where the kitchen is. Yunshu was also a little dumbfounded. When he went out in the morning, they were not there. Now, he realized that the entire house had been decorated. His birthday wish was to eat a bowl of longevity noodles and a boiled egg, but Big Sister had gone through so much trouble to give him such a big surprise. Yunshu wanted to cry, and then he really did. He kept wiping his eyes with his small hands. Bien Yuanji, who was watching from the side, was envious. He still remembered that his birthday was a few months ago. At that time, he didn't even have a full meal and could only drink 2 mouthfuls of cold water. Now that he saw Yunshu crying, he hurried forward to comfort him. "You should be happy about your birthday. Everyone is looking at you. Don't cry anymore." Yundong also walked out of the kitchen and looked at the little guy standing under the porch. Big Sister prepared everything meticulously. "Don't you like it?" "I like it. I like it." He wiped his tears and quickly ran over to hug her waist. "Big Sister, I like it so much. I'm so happy. I've never been so happy." Actually, I just want to eat a bowl of longevity noodles. Yundong stroked his head. There's longevity noodles, boiled eggs, and birthday cake. What's a birthday cake? The child looked up in confusion and blinked. Yundong did not answer. Instead, she pushed him. All right, you'll entertain your classmates first. You'll know when dinner starts later. Oh! Yunshu finally realized that he seemed to have neglected the guests. He immediately smiled in embarrassment and turned to bring his classmates to his room. Yunshu's room was very large. It was divided into an inner and outer room. There was a desk, a bed, and a bookcase. There were some books on the cabinet that they usually read, but there were also books that involved other aspects. Louis even found a novel inside and was so shocked that he almost threw it out. Madame Xue knocked on the door and came in with sugar water. Tong Xuetao followed behind with a pile of things in her hands. As soon as she entered, she said to Yunshu, "It's still early. Everyone can relax here. This is a jigsaw puzzle. Second young master knows how to play it. This is the Luban lock. You can try to undo it and put it back together. This is the chessboard. Everyone can play chess." She placed the things on the bed first and then spread 2 carpets on the ground so that everyone could sit on them. Junkin and the others were stunned as they watched Madame Xue and Tong Xuetao come and go. Their gazes slowly shifted to the pile of things. In the next moment, everyone rushed forward and targeted Luban lock. Only Louis tilted his head and curiously looked at the puzzle in his hand. What is this? How do I play it? It was something he had never seen before. It looked even more novel than the Luban lock. Chapter 428. So much food B0s and Vel. CM Yunshu walked over and took out one of the puzzle pieces. He placed it on the bed and took out a piece of paper. He said to Louis, "Look, this is a picture. The person on this picture is me." This picture was drawn by Yundong. It was a small picture of Yunshu with a big head and a small body. He looked exceptionally cute. Yunshu was very proud. He straightened his back and introduced, "You have to put all the pieces of wood together to make me. Isn't that interesting? There are rules and techniques to this. Let me tell you, I'm very familiar with this. If you don't understand, I can teach you." He pointed at the other pictures. "There are also pictures of Yuanji, our family, and this house. Let me tell you, the jigsaw puzzle of this house is very difficult. Do you think the colors are all the same? You don't even know where to put the bricks. This is too difficult for you. For the first time, we can start from the simple ones. For example, my picture. First, finish me, then challenge the difficult ones." Louis glanced at him and thought for a moment. Then, he slowly picked up the jigsaw puzzle of the house. "Yunshu, you'll lose me like this. I'm telling you that you'll regret it. Don't cry and beg me later." However, when the others heard his explanation, they stopped what they were doing and surrounded him. Xiaoyu was very loyal. "Yunshu, let me compliment your picture. Wow, this picture is so beautiful. Who drew it? Can they draw one for me too?" This was drawn by Big Sister. Big Sister was very busy. How could she help everyone draw? Therefore, Yunshu decisively refused. "You can draw this yourself. Didn't the teacher just teach you this drawing method? It'll be fine when you're familiar with it. When you're done, I can find someone to help you make a jigsaw puzzle." Xiaoyu was a little disappointed. He felt that even if he was proficient, he wouldn't be able to draw like this. Yunshu was very proud. Who asked him to have a good sister? Just as she was thinking about it, there was another knock on the door. This time it was Tong Xuetao who came in. The moment the door opened, a fragrance wafted in crazily. The little kid's gazes focused on the tray in Tong Xuetao's hand almost at the same time. She walked over with a smile. In fact, she was also swallowing her saliva. She could only desperately hold her breath to prevent the fragrance from entering her nostrils. Our miss said that there's still some time before dinner. She's afraid that everyone will be hungry, so she wants you to eat something first. She placed the tray on the table. This is fried chicken drumsticks, chicken wings, fries, and chips. You can eat them with this sauce. There are also melon seeds, peanuts, and lollipops here. If you want to eat sweet food, There are canned loquats, canned peaches, and dried fruit. By the way, each of you can have a portion of this double-skin milk. Everyone try it first. The children were speechless. Their eyes were about to pop out. They had naturally eaten good food, but they had never seen or heard of so many good things, especially the two from the prefectural city. They thought that there would be nothing surprising with their knowledge and experience. However, they had never heard of the puzzle before. What was this fried chicken drumstick, chicken wings, and chips? What was the can and lollipop? What was this double-skinned milk? They all looked so delicious. Chapter 429. Happy Birthday B0 Zenvel. CM There was actually not much food. The children ate a little to stop their hunger. Yundong knew that most of the children in the future liked to eat KFC. It was fine to eat it once in a while if it was hygienic. Tong Shuetao put down the things and left. The children gathered around the table and began to sniffle. Smells good. I'm sure it's good. Yunshu, can we eat? Yunshu was also stunned. He had eaten cans and lollipops. Eldest sister had also fried chicken drumsticks for him to eat. But what was this double-skin milk? However, he was the host. He immediately nodded and said seriously, "Of course you can eat. Everyone, don't stand on ceremony. Just make yourselves at home." The kids thanked him one after another. Then, the eldest, Zhang, handed the food over one by one. They took a mouthful of double-skin milk. Oh, it was smooth and fragrant. How could there be such a delicious thing? Everyone's eyes lit up. By the time they came back to their senses, they had almost finished it and were instantly embarrassed. Yunshu called everyone over to play and even went out to bring Zhang Jia and Zhang Lu in. The two of them were still a little timid in front of the students from the school. They stood in the corner and did not dare to speak. Fortunately, Zhang saw the desire for knowledge in their eyes. He became a little teacher and excitedly taught them how to read. Later on, Nyodan also came over. He was still studying in town and his school hours were late. Yunshu had always had a good relationship with him. They often practiced calligraphy and studied together after returning home. Especially after Chun Liang's eldest son returned, there was an additional family in the house. Occasionally, there would be a commotion. Nyodan was impatient and would go to Yunshu's house to study together most of the time. The Gu family's house was huge, and Yunshu's study was even more spacious. The lighting was also good. In addition, he had a good friend with him, so it was easier for him to learn here. At this moment, Yunshu's room was very lively. Everyone was playing games that they had never played before. They ate snacks that they had never eaten before and felt as if they had sublimated. They had originally wanted to educate Yunshu about poverty. Now that they had eaten his food, it was not appropriate for them to speak. However, Yunshu was really blessed to have so much delicious food. After more than an hour, Yundong finally let everyone out for dinner. In fact, they were already half full after eating the snacks. However, when they smelled the fragrance coming from the flower hall, they could not help but swallow their saliva. The sky had already darkened slightly, and the lanterns under the corridor had been lit. They were indescribably beautiful. Yunshu walked in front, followed by more than 10 classmates. He actually had the aura of a boss, if he had grown a little taller. As soon as they entered the reception hall, they saw Yundong holding a strange, beautiful, and sweet thing in his hand. There were 6 thin candles on it as she slowly walked to his side. Yunshu, happy birthday. Happy birthday, Ashu. Second brother, happy birthday. 3 voices rang out one after another. Through the hazy candlelight, Yunshu looked at his eldest sister, mother, and younger sister standing in front of him. His heart suddenly swelled. Some kind of emotion surged fiercely, making his eyes sore and swollen. In his mind, he could not help but think of last year's birthday. Because his father had stuffed a sweet into his mouth and second aunt had seen it. He had been scolded by his grandmother for the entire day. Chapter 430. 3 Wishes B0 Zenvel. CM at that time, he thought that he would never celebrate his birthday again. He was not happy at all. It was not good at all. But looking at the smiling faces of the 3 closest people in front of him, Yunshu suddenly choked. Gu Yundong quickly handed the cake in her hand to Shao Qingyuan and squatted down to rub his head. Everyone is looking at you. You can't cry. Big sister, I am. He thought that he only needed to eat a bowl of longevity noodles. He did not expect Big Sister to put in so much effort. He was really happy. Big Sister, you're so good. I'm so happy to be your younger brother. Gu Yundong was also very happy. She still remembered how he looked when she first came. He was skinny and had a big head. He was obviously very tired, but he still wanted to take on the responsibility of the entire family. He wanted to cry, but he smiled at her desperately as if it was not difficult at all as long as his family was by his side. At first, Gu Yundong thought that as long as Madame Yang and the other two did not drag her down, she would do her best to protect them and let them grow up safely. When did it start? She had been paying attention to the three of them and always wanted to give them the best. The warmth that surged from the depths of her heart seemed to have changed her a lot. She had really felt the feelings between her family, and she would subconsciously repay them. I'm also very happy that you're my younger brother. She led Yunshu to a stool at the side and sat down. She took the cake from Shao Qingyuan again and placed it on the table in front of him. Then, she met his puzzled gaze and smiled. This is the birthday cake I told you about. Come, close your eyes and make 3 wishes. Then blow out the candles. Your wishes will come true. Gu Yunshu's eyes lit up. His eyes, which had just been washed with tears, were especially lively. Really? Just make the wishes. He immediately closed his eyes obediently. My first wish is... You don't have to say it out. Fine. He made a new wish. He was very pious in his heart. His first wish was to find his father as soon as possible and have a family reunion. His second wish was for his mother's illness to be cured quickly. His third wish was for his family to be safe and happy forever. After that, he opened his eyes. Gu Yunshu did not know that his first wish would soon come true. Gu Yundong saw that he had opened his eyes and was about to ask him to blow out the candles when she saw that the little girl beside him was also making a wish with her eyes closed. She immediately smiled and simply waited for her until she opened her eyes in satisfaction. Only then did she ask Gu Yunshu to blow out the candles. The cake was sweet and rare. Gu Yundong saw that there were a lot of people, so she made 2 big pieces. At this moment, each of them cut a small piece and ate it. Not to mention the others. Even Shao Qingyuan couldn't help but narrow his eyes. This cake, he had made it before, but it was not easy to make cream. The group was in a good mood. Gu Yunshu ate the longevity noodles that he had been longing for. No one fought with him. After all, they were already full from eating everything else. At night, they even agreed to walk around the village to digest their food and send Nyoden home. They walked around the village before returning to the Gu residence. Gu Yundong arranged rooms for everyone. As everyone was small, it was not a problem for a few people to share a room. Under the warm blanket that emitted the smell of sunlight, everyone still felt like they were dreaming. Gu Yunshu's birthday was too special. The next day, Gu Yundong prepared cans for each of Yunshu's classmates as a return gift. This time, they each gave Yunshu a gift. It was not considered expensive, but it represented their goodwill. Then, she sent them to the carriages and got someone to ride them back to school. When the carriage left and she returned to the Gu family, she saw Shao Qingyuan standing at the entrance of the Shao family's house and talking to the Zhang family's escort. He seemed to have a difficult expression. Chapter 431. Gu Yundong leaves B0 CM Shao Qingyuan also saw her. After nodding slightly, he continued to talk to the escort. Not long after, the escort passed through the door. Shao Qingyuan walked towards her. He had something to say, but he didn't know how to start. He wanted to say something but hesitated. Gu Yundong could not help but laugh. What's wrong? If there's anything difficult, just say it. Shao Qingyuan rubbed his temples and said after a while, the Zhang family's escort agency is sending a batch of goods to Qingyuan Prefecture. They also have to transport something back. It's a long journey and they don't have enough manpower. They want me to help. If it was in the past, Shao Qingyuan had nothing to worry about and would just go. But now he was about to have a family. It would take at least a month or two to deliver goods to Qingyuan Prefecture. He had just confirmed his relationship with her and did not want to be separated. However, the Zhang family's bodyguard agency had interacted with him a lot in the past 6 months and their relationship was not bad. The manager of Gus, Zhang, was from the Zhang family's bodyguard agency. In addition, when he asked a martial master to come to his house to teach Mao and the others martial arts, the other party did not even decline and agreed readily. Therefore, now that the Zhang family's bodyguard agency needed help, he could not just reject them. Yundong did not expect this. Her expression became strange. She pulled her hair that was hanging by her side and looked hesitant. Actually, I also have something to tell you. What is it? Qingyuan was stunned. Yundong lowered her head slightly and said in a low voice, "A few days ago, I received a letter from Dr. Song. He said that there may be by Musi in Wanqing Prefecture. I want to make a trip to Wanqing Prefecture after Yunshu's birthday." Actually, as soon as she received the news, she wanted to tell Qingyuan, but she didn't know how to. Qingyuan was stunned. She was going to Wanqing Prefecture? Then I'll reject the Zhang family's escort agency and accompany you there, he said without hesitation. Yundong quickly stopped her. Don't. The Zhang family's bodyguard agency has helped you a lot. It's rare that they need your help. They definitely can't find anyone else. She thought for a moment and asked, "When will they set off?" "In 2 days. Then I'll set off in 2 days too. I happen to pass by Qingyuan Prefecture on my way to Wanqing Prefecture. We can travel together for a while." Qingyuan frowned. "Are you going to finish the rest of the journey alone?" Yundong nodded. "You don't trust me?" "Of course I do." Qingyuan was a little vexed. Why did things happen so coincidentally? Not only did he have to deliver the goods to Qingyuan Prefecture, but there was also a batch of goods that had to be transported back in time. Otherwise, he could accompany her there. He knew that she had the ability to settle these things alone, but Qingyuan wanted to share the burden with her. He was her future husband. He hoped that he would be the one to experience everything with her in the future. In the end, they could only do as Yundong said after some discussion. There were still 2 days left. Yundong's arrangements were enough. Moreover, with the previous experience, no one would panic anymore. Only at the workshop there were more people and the person in charge had also changed to Tong'en. This was not a big deal. After a few days of observation, Tong'en was getting more and more proficient. In the end, Yundong brought a lot of canned food and dried fruits. Most of them were placed in her space, while the rest were placed in the carriage. This time, under Tong Shuetao's strong request, she brought her along. Qingyuan also brought Mao and Zhu along to let them see the world. The other 2 stayed at home. That morning, Yundong got into the carriage while Madame Yang and the others reluctantly bade her farewell. She left Yongfu village. As soon as she left, someone came looking for her. Chapter 432. Children are debts B0s and Vel. CM Madame Zhou had made up her mind to look for Yundong. She did not even tell Chen Liang. But when she reached the Gu residence, she saw that Aunt Ku and the others had just turned around. Yundong had already left. Aunt Ku invited her in. She shook her head, forcing a smile on her face. Aunt Ku had also heard a little about what had happened in her family recently. Seeing this, she could not help but raise her eyebrows and ask, "You're looking for Yundong for your first son, right?" Madame Zhou laughed dryly. No. Whether it's true or not, I'm afraid you have to wait for Yundong to come back first." Madame Zhou knew that Tong'en was in charge of the workshop now. Tong'en was a servant of the Gu family and had the right to manage it. However, he could not recruit people without Yundong's instructions. She could ask Yundong for help because of Yundong's friendship with the Qin family, but she did not have much of a relationship with Tong and Madame Zhou did not know what to feel. She felt vexed and relieved. She had no choice but to come over because she was annoyed by her eldest son at home. Seeing that his second son was becoming more and more promising in the Gu family, collecting fruits everywhere outside, and even buying some snacks for the children to eat when he came back, Chen Liang valued him more and more. The eldest son's life was too smooth sailing in the past. After the work in town was gone, He came back and was laughed at by many people. Especially when he was working in the fields, his energy was not even comparable to hers. He could even knock his feet with a hoe. He was not someone born to do this at all. In addition, his wife was not someone who could endure hardship. Every day she would complain that she was tired even when cooking. When feeding pigs and chickens, she despised the dirt. For this, the second daughter-in-law's face darkened. As for their son, he was also studying in town now. He was 2 years older than Yodan and lived in his grandfather's house. He was quite obedient. The atmosphere in the house was getting tenser and tenser. The two brothers even quarreled yesterday. This had never happened before, which made Madame Zhou anxious. She wondered if she could ask Yundong for help. After Madame Zhou left, Aunt Ku shook her head. Fortunately, she did not have any children. Otherwise, she would still have to worry about them when she was old. Looking at Madame Zhou, she used to be so energetic. Her eldest son had only been back for a few months, but she looked like she had aged a few years. Aunt Ku shook her head and turned to enter. Yundong had already followed Shao Qingyuan to the Zhang family's bodyguard agency. This was her first time here. The Zhang family's bodyguard agency was indeed not big and there were not many escorts, but all of them were energetic and seemed to be loyal. Shao Qingyuan had said 2 days ago that Yundong would travel with them. Hence, no one was surprised to see Yundong. Moreover, because Zhang Gang was the shopkeeper of Gus, Zhang Gang's wife warmly served her tea and brought out the snacks she had made for her to eat. Yundong had met her before. Previously, during the New Year, Zhang Gang had brought her to Yongfu village to celebrate the New Year. She was a straightforward and generous aunt. The people from the escort agency were all preparing outside. The team would set off after 7 o'clock. Yundong chatted with Zhang Gang's wife in the hall for a while before walking leisurely to the courtyard. She watched as everyone carried the things to the carriage. She moved closer to Shao Qingyuan and asked, "What are you bringing to Qingyuan Prefecture this time?" Shao Qingyuan's expression was complicated as he looked at the carriage in front of him in silence. After a long time, he said, "Wine." "Wine?" Yundong was about to ask something when she heard a familiar voice outside. Chapter 433. Meeting the Tao family B0 Nvel. CM Yundong had just turned his head when the other party saw her. He immediately smiled. "Boss Gu, you're here too." "Young Master Tao." Yundong nodded slightly. She looked down on Tao Xing, especially after he lost to Lu Wei. However, Tao Feng knew the ways of the world. When Gus opened for business, he even came to support them and gave them gifts. Later, he also asked the servants at home to buy a lot of white sugar. "I haven't seen Boss Gu for a long time. Gus seems to have a few new canned fruits recently. They taste very good. It's just that they're too in demand. I want to buy some for others, but I can't buy them." Tao Feng shook his head regretfully. Yundong was about to answer when Shao Qingyuan suddenly said, "Let's go over there to help." Yundong felt that something was wrong with his expression just now. No, it should be said that it had happened before when they met the Tao family. Did he have any grudges with the Tao family? Yundong nodded at Tao Feng and left with Shao Qingyuan. Shao Qingyuan had indeed gone to help load the goods. Yundong stood behind him and watched as he busied himself. After he carried one of the jars of wine into the carriage, she asked, "Is this wine from the Tao family? Is it their wine that needs to be sent to Qingyuan Prefecture?" "Yes, they're said to be newly brewed. There are only 4 jars. There were also some other things. They were transported by the way. The most important merchandise was only 4 jars of wine from the Tao family." Yundong tilted her head and asked him with a smile, "You know the Tao family?" "I don't know them." Shao Qingyuan turned around. When he saw her tilt her head, he actually felt that she was a little cute. The gloom in his heart just now was suddenly swept away. He couldn't help but look around. When he saw that no one was looking in his direction, he took her hand. He gently rubbed it twice before saying, "About the Tao family, I haven't thought of how to say it yet. They'll tell you in the future." Yundong glared at him. This person was always finding opportunities to interact with her. He was getting more and more shameless. Shao Qingyuan couldn't help but laugh. Someone from the courtyard called out to them, "Qingyuan, Miss Gu, let's go." Gu Yundong retracted her hand. Shao Qingyuan was a little annoyed. Why did someone ruin his plans every time? The convoy had already been prepared. There were only 3 carriages. Including Gu Yundong's carriage, there were 4 carriages. It was not a big team. There were only 6 escorts, including Shao Qingyuan. Mao and Zhu were there to gain experience. When the convoy set off, Tao Feng was still standing at the entrance of the courtyard. When he saw Escort Wang, who was in charge of the team this time, he said, "Thank you for your trouble. I wish you a safe journey." "Don't worry, young Master Tao. We will definitely deliver the items safely." Escort Wang was ambitious and his gaze was firm. With a wave of his hand, he walked out of the escort agency in a grand manner. The escorts behind also followed with their heads held high. Gu Yundong was speechless. It was as if they were going out to fight. Only Shao Qingyuan continued to walk past Tao Feng without looking aside. He was in Gu Yundong's carriage. Sometimes he would drive the carriage and sometimes Tong Xue Tao would drive the carriage. He would directly enter the carriage and touch her small hand. The other people in the convoy were all men, and they could be considered half martial artists. When they went out, they did not pay much attention to the distinction between men and women, especially since the 2 of them were engaged. It was normal for a man to take care of his fiancée. The carriage passed by the Xuanhe Prefecture and stayed overnight. Gu Yundong went to look at the wall with eldest Aunt Gu and the others' portraits. Chapter 434. Not Good B0s and Vel. CM seeing that there were several notices blocking the portraits. Gu Yundong frowned slightly and reached out to tear them off and paste them to the side. Later on, she even went to Aunt Kes' house and asked the neighbors nearby. Unfortunately, the neighbors said that no one had come to look for Aunt Ku, so Gu Yundong could only leave regretfully. Unexpectedly, as soon as she left, a woman returned home. This person happened to be the person who saw Mrs. Ren of the Zhou mansion that day. The next day, when the convoy left the Xuanhe Prefecture, the accommodation conditions for the rest of the journey were much worse. Sometimes they had to stay outside. The convoy traveled fast. In fact, they had already tried their best to take care of the 2 girls, Gu Yundong and Tong Xue Tao. However, they had to send the goods to their destination as soon as possible before they could be at ease. Shao Qingyuan could not bear it. He had wanted to ask her not to follow the convoy several times, but Gu Yundong had rejected him. In any case, she was already used to it. In the past, not only did she stay outside when she fled, but she could not even sleep. Now that Shao Qingyuan was by her side, she could sleep especially soundly in the carriage at night. There was nothing bitter about it. Tong Xue Tao was even more unwilling. She could learn martial arts from these escorts. How could she give up such a rare opportunity? However, with Gu Yundong around, the escorts had a sumptuous meal. In the past, when they went out, they were all rough men. Not only was the food they ate hard, but it also tasted especially bad. Even if someone cooked, it was still torture. It was either too salty or too tasteless. It was better to eat dry food. With Gu Yundong and Tong Xue Tao around, their culinary skills were very good. Since they had to eat anyway, it was fine to make more. They had brought rice, noodles, vegetable oil. The escort sect would also take the initiative to give them some money for the food. In any case, the Tao family had given them a lot of money for this trip. Escort Wang especially liked Gu Yundong's cooking. When the carriage was parked in the wilderness, he would often run to her side and squat down to take a look. "It's a pity that we will reach Qingyuan Prefecture in 2 days. We can't enjoy Miss Gus cooking anymore. You've been watching for so long, but you still haven't learned it?" Gu Yundong stirred the vegetable porridge twice and asked Tong Xue Tao to go to the carriage to take out the pickled vegetables she had made. Escort Wang shook his head. "This really requires talent. My hand is no different from my foot. It's really no good." As he spoke, he slapped his palm hard. Gu Yundong was speechless. It was Shao Qingyuan who pushed him to the side. "Go and look after the goods. Don't be lazy." "Hey kid. I'm at least 12 years older than you. Can you show me some respect?" Escort Wang snorted unhappily. The other escorts at the side roared with laughter. Brother Wang, you said it yourself. We'll be arriving at Qingyuan Prefecture in 2 days. Qingyuan is going to be separated from Miss Gu, yet you still disturbed the couple. You're too thick-skinned. Isn't that so? Your wife isn't around, so you specially went to sabotage other couples. How can you be so shameless? Someone shouted at Gu Yundong. Miss Gu, don't let him eat your porridge. Gu Yundong had interacted with the escorts in the escort agency for a long time and was very familiar with them. She quite liked these people. All of them treated her like a younger sister or a junior. Other than having to make her cook, they did not need her to worry about anything else. She smiled and was about to serve the porridge. Suddenly, a Mao, who had gone to the forest to relieve himself, ran over quickly. Young master, miss, bad news. I saw a few people with masks on coming this way. Chapter 435. Gu Yundong, who is highly aspired B0 Zenvel. CM upon hearing this, the escorts, who had been smiling just now, suddenly stood up. Their expressions instantly became serious, and they looked ready to fight. Escort Wang directly said to Shao Qingyuan, hurry up and bring Miss Gu and the others to the forest to hide. Ifa Wang, look after the goods. It was too late to leave with the goods now. Instead of panicking, it was better to prepare for war. Then, he turned around and asked a Mao, did you see how many people there were? About a dozen. A Mao's face was still a little pale. He knew that trouble was coming. Although he had learned a little martial arts, he was still not a match for his enemies in a real life-and-death battle. Escort Wang frowned. Why would someone rob us? This road has been very safe since the disaster. Besides, the things they were protecting this time were not expensive. However, there was no time for him to think too much now. He glanced at the escorts. Protect yourselves. Ifa and Wang responded and walked to the carriage of goods. Shao Qingyuan also led Gu Yundong and Tong Xuetao into the forest at the side. Gu Yundong was skilled. She wanted to stay, but on second thought, she left with Tong Xuetao and Shao Qingyuan. After Shao Qingyuan brought them over and hid them, he asked Mao and Zhu to stay behind and protect them. Then he quickly walked out. As expected, he saw that Escort Wang had already fought with the dozen or so masked men. Although Escort Wang and the others were experienced and skilled in dealing with enemies, it was difficult for two fists to fight four hands. They were starting to be at a disadvantage. Ifa and Wang, who were beside the truck, were surrounded by 5 or 6 people. Afa's arm had already been cut. Shao Qingyuan narrowed his eyes and immediately ran to the side of the carriage to kick away the person who was about to slash Wang. As soon as he joined, the situation eased a little. Escort Wang slowly heaved a sigh of relief, and Ifa and Wang finally smiled. Gu Yundong and the others hid behind a large rock. Although Mao and the others were nervous, they were unwilling to just hide behind and watch helplessly. After a while, he finally couldn't help but say, Miss, let Xue Tao protect you. Zhu and I will help. You'll be courting death if you go, Gu Yundong said coldly. Can't you see that they kill others without batting an eyelid? Escort Wang is already injured. You haven't even touched your sabers. How can you fight them to the death? Mao scratched his head and thought for a while. We can smash them with rocks. Zhu also nodded. There are many thick sticks here. If we sneak attack from behind, we can at least knock out a few. Tong Xuetao scolded them. Come on. You're not going to help. You're going to add trouble. You might even need the future master to protect you. Just as she finished speaking, she exclaimed softly, Miss, they're too despicable. The 3 of them surrounded the future master and attacked him together. They almost hit him. Mao became even more anxious. Miss, quickly think of a way. That's right. We can't just watch helplessly. Zhu suddenly hated himself for learning martial arts too slowly recently. Miss, you've always been smart. There must be a way. As the 3 of them spoke, they turned around and placed all their hopes on Gu Yundong. However, the next moment the 3 of them were stunned. Wait, when did the crossbow in Miss' hand appear? Why didn't they see it? Chapter 436. Put into the space B0 Zenvel. CM Gu Yundong had already aimed the crossbow at the person who was planning to sneak an attack on Shao Qingyuan's back. With a swoosh, the crossbow bolt seemed to have eyes and suddenly pierced into that person's back. Mao and Zhu had seen her shoot people with a crossbow last time, but this was the first time Tong Shuetao had seen it. Her eyes lit up with excitement. "Miss is amazing." Gu Yundong frowned. The angle was not good. She could not kill the target in one strike. Escort Wang and the robbers, who were fighting crazily, were stunned when they saw someone fall to the ground after being shot. They still have people in the dark. Let's end this quickly. As soon as the leader of the robbers shouted, those people approached the carriage with all their might. Gu Yundong shot out her second arrow, aiming at the leader of the robbers. Unfortunately, that person reacted quickly and blocked it with his knife. He only staggered slightly. Moreover, 3 people were already running in the direction of the crossbow. Gu Yundong hurriedly said to Tong Shuetao and the other 2, "Go over there. Miss, I can help." Gu Yundong turned around and met their determined expressions. She paused and agreed. "All right, I'll leave these people to you." She thought that since she wanted them to come out and train, she couldn't keep letting them hide behind her. If they just watched and never fought, they would never be trained. However, there were 3 enemies. Gu Yundong shot an arrow and killed one of them. Then, she bent down as if she was untying the bag on her leg. In fact, she took out 2 daggers from her space and handed them to her fellows. "Be careful. If you really can't win, run." Then, she ran to the other side of the forest and shot 2 more arrows. She could tell that this group of people's target was the 4 jars of wine from the Tao family in the carriage. Therefore, there were still many people surrounding Wang and Fa. Suddenly, Wang's leg was slashed and kicked. He was sent flying and fainted. However, the robber did not give up and slashed at his neck with a knife. Gu Yundong's expression changed slightly. She quickly aimed at him and shot an arrow. As a result, she didn't pay enough attention to Fa, who had also been stabbed. Gu Yundong was a little vexed. Although crossbow bolts were convenient and she had enough arrowheads, they were only suitable for long-range sneak attacks. It was troublesome and time-consuming to reload. Gu Yundong did not have much time. Seeing that 2 people were about to attack Fa, Gu Yundong could not care less and ran out of the forest. Shao Qingyuan was the first to see her. He frowned slightly and walked towards her as he fought. Gu Yundong held a long-handled watermelon knife that was specially used to cut zombies in her previous life. She aimed it at the back of the person who wanted to kill Fa. Then, she jumped up onto the carriage. The reins of the carriage had already been cut off. This was to prevent the robbers from taking the carriage away. Gu Yundong blocked the knife as she reached into the carriage. He touched the goods inside and put them away slightly. The 4 jars of wine were all put into her space. Then, she jumped down from the carriage as if nothing had happened and slashed at a robber in front of her. She deliberately let the other robber into the carriage. Fa and Escort Wang saw it and their expressions changed drastically. They rushed over to guard it. Unexpectedly, when the robber lifted the curtain, he only saw an empty carriage. However, his back was slashed by Shao Qingyuan, who had rushed behind him. Chapter 437. How could there be no goods? B0 Nvel. CM the robber endured the pain and rolled down from the carriage. Then, he shouted at the robber leader, "Boss, we've been tricked. There's nothing in the carriage." The boss was stunned. "What did you say?" "The carriage is empty. We've been tricked." The boss' expression changed drastically. He looked at the situation in front of him. Only one of the escorts had fallen, but his side had suffered heavy losses. If they continued fighting, they would not be able to gain anything, especially when there were no goods. Therefore, he suddenly forced Escort Wang back with a slash and said to the others, "Retreat first." The robbers were already a little tired from fighting. Seeing this, they all turned to run. The escorts did not chase after him. Escort Wang hurriedly went to look at Wang, who was lying on the ground. Seeing that he was still breathing, Escort Wang heaved a sigh of relief. When other escorts had come to take care of him, he came to look at the carriage without a word. The robber just said that there was no stock in the carriage? How could there be no stock? Could it be that someone had already taken it away? The main mission of an escort was to protect the goods. He could lose his life, but he could not lose the goods. Seeing that he was about to get into the carriage, Yundong immediately went up. When no one was paying attention, she put all 4 jars of wine back. Therefore, when Escort Wang lifted the curtain of the carriage, he saw that there was no problem with the goods they wanted to protect this time. The goods stayed inside quietly like sleeping children. He was dumbfounded. He lowered the curtain of the carriage and opened it again in disbelief. He was relieved to see that the goods were still there. Strange, the goods are clearly still here. Why did the robber say that there was nothing? Yundong pretended that she did not know anything and said, "Maybe he saw wrongly? Or maybe that person was not in cahoots with the robbers and deliberately said that." Escort Wang did not know how to explain it, so he could only accept this explanation for the time being. Only Qingyuan quietly glanced at Yundong. When the robber approached the carriage, he was afraid that Yundong would be in danger, so he chased after him. Therefore, when that person lifted the curtain to take a look, he knew very well if there was anything inside. But Qingyuan did not say anything. He just walked to Yundong's side and sized her up. "Are you injured?" Yundong shook her head. "I'm fine." The next moment she frowned. "Are you injured?" Qingyuan's arm had been cut. It did not look very deep, but the blood had stained a large part of his sleeve. "Miss, young master, we're back." At this moment, Mao and the other 2 ran out of the forest quickly. It seemed that they had already dealt with the 2 robbers and were not injured. Yundong could not care less. She quickly went to her carriage to take down the medical kit that she had prepared. Then, she cut the fabric on Qingyuan's arm with a pair of scissors and washed his wound. After disinfecting it with alcohol, she carefully applied medicine and wrapped it in gauze. She wrapped the wound up like a dumpling, layer by layer, just like when his palm was scratched. Qingyuan quietly let her move. He looked at her lowered eyes and smiled in satisfaction. However, this peace was soon broken. There was an escort calling Wang's name in a panic. The situation looked terrible. Yundong and Qingyuan turned around and saw that Wang had already woken up. However, his face was pale as he spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. He was not the only one who was injured. All the escorts present were injured. Even Escort Wang was limping. Chapter 438. What Qingyuan did be-0 CM Yundong hurriedly ran over to check on Wang. However, she was not a doctor. Although she had prepared a complete medical kit, it was obvious that Wang had suffered internal injuries. The escort agency had also prepared all kinds of medicine for injuries, but the medicine for internal injuries had been knocked to the ground in the fight just now. At this moment, they had all been trampled. On the other hand, Qingyuan went forward and looked at Wang carefully. Then, he turned around and got into the carriage. After a while, he took out a small porcelain bottle and handed it to Escort Wang. "This is a pill I made myself. It's for internal injuries. If you trust me, you can give it a try." "You made your own pills?" Not only Escort Wang, but even Yundong was shocked. No, since when did he know how to make pills? Escort Wang was a little hesitant, but Wang could not help but spit out another mouthful of blood. The situation was a little bad. He gritted his teeth. Seeing that Wang agreed, he directly let him eat it. Yundong immediately looked at Wang nervously. He was a little excited. Her Qingyuan actually knew how to make medicine. Was he so talented? Qingyuan quietly held her hand, but Yundong did not notice. The medicine seemed to be very good. After Wang ate it, he felt much better. Although his face was still pale and he was in low spirits, he felt that it was not as difficult to breathe as before. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. The others had all suffered external injuries, so everyone was experienced. Wang was taken to the carriage, and someone took care of the aftermath. However, Escort Wang and the others were very curious. Why would someone come to rob them? The Tao family's 4 jars of wine actually attracted the robbers to barge into the official road openly. This was not ordinary at all. As Escort Wang bandaged his wound, he said, ever since the disaster. The road from the Xuanhe Prefecture to the Qingyuan Prefecture has been very calm. I've never heard of anyone robbing the travelers here. Furthermore, these people attacked without saying a word. Their goal was very clear. It was the Tao family's 4 jars of wine. What's the name of that wine? If it's really that valuable, why would the Tao family hand it to our escort agency? Moreover, they didn't demand the number of escorts and just let us go? Yundong was also thinking that this was indeed very contradictory. Are those people the Tao family's enemies? Perhaps the valuable things that the Tao family really wanted to give were not here. Was handing them over to the escort agency just a smokescreen? There was no problem with the wine. The 4 jars of wine were personally loaded into the carriage by the escorts after they examined them. Tao Feng had been to the bodyguard agency before, but he had never had the chance to come into contact with alcohol. Escort Wang also had a headache. Forget it. This has nothing to do with us. We just have to deliver the goods as soon as possible. We won't rest tonight. We'll travel through the night. As he spoke, he looked at Yundong, who had no objections. Everyone quickly tidied up the things. There was no more porridge to eat. Yundong felt that it was a pity. She could only take out her stock, including dried meat, fruits, and steamed buns. Everyone would eat them to fill their stomachs. The carriage sped up, but Yundong was in the carriage and looked at Shao Qingyuan curiously. What is it? When did you make that medicine? I've never heard of you studying medicine. This person knew how to hunt, practiced martial arts, and could read. He was already a rarely capable person in Yongfu village. Moreover, he had worked hard to make these. Yundong had always known that he was very good, but she had never heard of him dabbling in pharmaceuticals. Chapter 439. Hugging again B0s and Vel. CM Shao Qingyuan smiled. I've never learned it. Ha! A question mark slowly appeared in Yundong's mind. Do you still remember the medical book you gave me? He was referring to the medical book that Yundong had copied from Song Dajiang. At that time, Yundong had given it to him so that he could read it and remember the herbs inside. If he saw the herbs in the mountains in the future, he would not miss them. At that time, Shao Qingyuan remembered the book after reading it once. It made Yundong feel defeated. After that, the book was left with him. In addition to the medicinal ingredients recorded in the book, there were also a few common formulas written at the end. I tried according to the words written on it and happened to make such a medicine to treat internal injuries. Later, I fed this medicine to the wild rabbit. There was no problem, so I took it to an old doctor in the county. After the old doctor saw it, he bought 2 small bottles. Yundong's mouth was wide open in disbelief. Wait, he made it just because he saw the formula. Moreover, the old doctor even bought the pills from him? What's wrong? Shao Qingyuan held her hand. Yundong suddenly pounced on him and hugged his waist with a happy smile on her face. Shao Qingyuan was stunned. Then, he wrapped his arms around her waist and pressed her tightly into his arms. His voice was low. Are you happy? Of course I'm happy. I'll ask Dr. Song later and get him to find some other medical books for you to read. I didn't know that your talent was here. Shao Qingyuan lowered his eyes slightly and looked at the top of her head with burning eyes. He did not know if he was talented or not. He only knew that while he had nothing to do in the past, he should not let this situation go. Since he was going to marry her, he had to make a career. In the future, they would have children. He had to plan for the future of raising his wife and children. He would not try to become a scholar. It had only been nearly 2 years since he started to read. In the past, he did not have the time to read in the Li family. It was only after the old man of the Li family died that he went out to find work and slowly learned. He practiced martial arts so that he could fight back and knock people down when others bullied him. At first, he had stayed in the mountains for too long and fought with many animals to train himself. Later, he trained with the escorts of the escort agency and had encountered people in the martial arts world who taught him a few moves. In the past, someone had advised him to join the army, but he did not have the intention to make contributions. Now, he would not go either. It was easy to join the army, but it would take years. If his wife was taken away by other men, he would not be able to find her. Because of this, Qingyuan also spent a period of time anxiously until he saw the medical book. He did not want to be a pure doctor. He wanted to be a pharmaceutical merchant. If he became a big pharmaceutical merchant, not only would he be able to treat people, but he would also have power. The internal injury medicine this time was the first medicine he made. There would be more and more in the future. Yundong, he called her softly. Yundong was suddenly stunned. Was this the first time he had called her by her name? She felt her ears itch and some joy welled up in him. However, Qingyuan hugged her even more tightly. If you can't find by Musi when you go to Wanqing Prefecture this time, there's no need to be anxious. Perhaps we can use another medicine to treat Auntie's illness. He'll work hard to read books and study medicinal herbs. Therefore, there are some things that you can let me help you share. Yundong blinked and grabbed the hem of his shirt. After a long time, she said in a low voice, "Okay." Chapter 440. Going to Wanqing Prefecture alone B0 CM. The carriage rolled forward. It did not rest much along the way. At night, Yundong fell asleep in Qingyuan's arms. Qingyuan looked at her smiling face and couldn't help but think of the scene in the day. He was sure that he hadn't seen wrongly when the 4 jars of wine suddenly disappeared and appeared again. He didn't know what kind of trick she had used to fool the robbers and him, but she clearly had no intention of saying it, so he didn't ask. The carriage arrived at Qingyuan Prefecture on the morning of the 3rd day. They did not encounter any robbers along the way, and everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Wang was much better. He ate 2 more pills given by Qingyuan. They were indeed effective. Because of this, escort Wang even bought a small bottle from him. Yundong and Qingyuan were separated at the city gate. She had no intention of entering the city. Qingyuan could only remind her to be careful on the road. Then, he frowned and accompanied her for a long distance before returning. When he entered the city again, it was already noon. Yundong only left with Tong Xuetao. Qingyuan wanted her to bring Mao, but she did not agree. She had always been unwilling to bring too many people around for help. It was enough to have Tong Xuetao by her side. Mao and Zhu were men, so it was inconvenient. Tong Xuetao was not used to not traveling with the convoy. She drove the carriage and let her lady rest in the carriage. She was a little nervous and excited. Wanqing Prefecture was relatively close to Qingyuan Prefecture. They rushed and arrived at the city gate in more than 10 days. When they arrived, it was already evening. The carriage barely entered the city before the city gate closed. Even though it was already this hour, Wanqing Prefecture was still very lively. Compared to Yongning Prefecture, which had experienced famine, and Qingyuan Prefecture, which had experienced chaos, this place was more than a little prosperous. However, there were probably many refugees who had come to Wanqing Prefecture back then. Now, there were many people on the streets who looked down and out while trying to get a job. "Miss, where are we staying tonight?" Tong Xuetao asked Yundong, who was also sitting on the shaft of the carriage and sizing up the street scenery on both sides. "Ask if there's a Huimin Medical Center here." Tong Xuetao responded and got off the carriage. She found a shop assistant who was still working and asked. Unexpectedly, the waiter shook his head. "I've been working in this prefectural city for 3 years, but I've never heard of Huimin Medical Center. Miss, can you ask someone else?" Tong Xuetao found 2 more passers-by, who also shook their heads. She could only run back in disappointment. "Miss, they said that this clinic doesn't exist in the prefectural city." Yundong frowned. Be it the Xuanhe Prefecture, the Qingyuan Prefecture, or even the Yongning Prefecture that had been rebuilt after the disaster, the Huimin Medical Center had established a branch there. Moreover, they were quite famous, but the Huimin Medical Center did not establish a branch here. When she was in Qingyuan Prefecture, she had a good relationship with shopkeeper Chao of Huimin Medical Center. Especially with Song Dajiang in the middle, shopkeeper Chao even gave her a letter when she left. He said that Huimin Medical Center was branched all over Dajiang. If she needed any help in the future, she could ask the medical center for help. With this letter, Huimin Medical Center could make things easier for her. However, she did not expect Wanqing Prefecture to not have it. "Then let's go. Let's find an inn to stay in first." Tomorrow we'll ask around about the Xine family. Of course, my lady. The carriage finally stopped at the entrance of a hotel called Yuelai Inn. Yundong had booked 2 rooms. She still wanted her privacy. When the waiter brought them upstairs, she still did not give up and asked, "Is there a Huimin Medical Center in Wanqing Prefecture?" Chapter 441. Someone is following us. The waiter was stunned for a moment. He thought for a moment and said, "I don't think so. However, the prefectural city is so big. The Huimin Medical Center that you mentioned might be hidden in an alley. I'm not very knowledgeable. Should I help you ask around later?" "Thank you." Yundong smiled at him. Before she left, she had specially given him a tip. The waiter's face lit up. As expected, he became even more attentive. Tong Shui Tao looked at his back and said, "This waiter is really meticulous. That's why you can only be envious when others get rewards." Yundong teased her and entered the house without looking back. Tong Shui Tao immediately became a little dejected and carried the things in her hand into the room. Yuelai Inn was not far from the city gate. Yundong was only resting for the night. She would definitely keep looking tomorrow. The waiter was really responsible. Later, after she finished eating, he even came over and told her about what he had found out. "I've asked the shopkeeper and the night watchman. There's indeed no Huimin Medical Center." Yundong thanked him and did not dwell on this matter. She rested early that day. The next morning, after breakfast, she asked the waiter where Xine Manor was. The Xine Manor was quite famous in the Wanqing Prefecture. The waiter immediately pointed in a certain direction, but it was a little far. The manor was in the west of the city. Yundong took Tong Shui Tao to the west of the city and found an inn nearby. She then went out and planned to walk around the Xine residence. According to the waiter, the Xine family was very famous in Wanqing Prefecture because the Xine family was not only rich, but also powerful. Putting everything else aside, the second young master of the Xine family had married the daughter of the prefecture magistrate of Wanqing Prefecture and was in-laws with the prefecture magistrate. Not to mention that when the late emperor traveled in the south more than 20 years ago, when he arrived at Wanqing Prefecture, it was the Xine Prefecture who received him. Even if the late emperor was not a good person, the Xine family had such glorious deeds. They could do whatever they wanted in the prefectural city. Hence, when she recalled that song Dajiang asked her to buy by music from the Xine family if she could, she wanted to hammer him to death. She was indeed considered rich now, but that was only compared to the villagers of Yongfu village. Compared to the Xine family, they did not care about all her assets, okay? How could she buy it? Since she couldn't buy it, she could only think of another way. She really hoped that the head of the Xine family would be like Peng Zhongfei back then, a person who could be duped into obediently taking out things. Yundong sighed. However, after circling around the entrance of the Xine manor, she decided to return to the inn first. It was better to think about it at length. Tong Shui Tao had no idea what her mistress was thinking. Wherever her mistress went, she would follow. When the two of them returned from the Xine manor and were about to reach the inn, Tong Shui Tao suddenly frowned. Yundong narrowed her eyes and stopped in her tracks. Tong Shui Tao quickly walked to her side and whispered into her ear, "Miss, someone is following us. Does the Xine family know that we're plotting against them?" The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. "Aren't you thinking too highly of the Xine family?" She shook her head. "No. This person's tracking methods are clumsy. He was discovered immediately. So what do we do? Go down that alley." Yundong gestured and glanced to the left. Tong Shui Tao nodded, and the two of them continued forward as if nothing had happened. When they reached the alley and entered, they turned around and waited for the other party to arrive. As expected, there were no surprises at all. The people behind followed closely into the alley. Chapter 442. What did you say? My father unexpectedly. When he looked up, the man saw Yundong and Tong Shui Tao's sneering expressions and Tong Shui Tao's provocative look. But in the next moment, Yundong's expression disappeared. Tong Shui Tao was also stunned. This was because the other party was an old man with patches all over his clothes. He looked down and out. In fact, Yundong felt that this person looked familiar, but she could not remember. The old man was also stunned. He hesitated for a while before asking in a hoarse voice, "Are you, Miss Gu?" He did not dare to recognize her. After all, she looked well-dressed and rich. She did not look like someone he knew at all. "My surname is Gu, and you are—" Gu Yundong thought for a moment, and someone suddenly flashed across her mind. She widened her eyes and asked, "Are you Grandpa Yu?" Joy flashed across the other party's face. "You're really Yundong?" "Yes, it's me." Gu Yundong really did not expect that the old man she had met outside the Qingyuan Prefecture would bump into her again. She took a few steps forward and walked to Grandpa Yes' side. "I didn't expect to see you again. How have you been recently?" Great, I'm fine." Just as he finished speaking, there was a gurgling sound in his stomach. Grandpa Yu immediately felt embarrassed. "I had some porridge in the morning. I went out for a walk and it was gone. There's a wonton shop over there. Let's go eat a bowl of wontons." No need. They'll just go home and eat." Gu Yundong had already helped him over. "It's been more than half a year since we last met. They'll catch up with you. I also want to try the wontons here." Grandpa Yu did not say anything else. He knew that she had always been kind. Before she left last time, she gave them a basket of food, which allowed the family to make it to Wanqing Prefecture. At the wonton stall, Gu Yundong ordered 3 bowls of wontons. Grandpa Yu was indeed hungry. When he saw the white and fat wonton floating in the bowl, he couldn't help but wipe his face and lower his head to eat. Gu Yundong waited for him to finish eating before asking, "Grandpa Yu, how did you recognize me? Wasn't her image too different from before? Why was Grandpa Yes' eyes so sharp?" Grandpa Yu wiped his mouth and couldn't help but laugh. "I've been squatting over there, looking for a job. When I heard the two of you talking, I felt that it sounded very familiar, so I couldn't help but follow behind. Actually, I didn't expect it to really be you. I was just asking when you discovered me. I didn't expect." As he spoke, he could not help but sigh. Then, he looked up and asked, "By the way, where are you staying now?" "At the Xuanhe Prefecture." Grandpa Yu was stunned. "Xuanhe Prefecture? You went to the Xuanhe Prefecture back then?" "Yes." Gu Yundong nodded. "I originally planned to come here." She lied. In fact, her goal was the Xuanhe Prefecture from the beginning. She just did not tell anyone. "But at that time, I saw too many people coming to Wanqing Prefecture. I thought that with so many people running over, what if it became chaotic again? So I went to Xuanhe Prefecture." "I see." Grandpa Yu muttered in a daze. No wonder we couldn't catch up to you when we sped up. No wonder your father couldn't find you no matter how hard he searched." Gu Yundong stopped wiping the corners of her mouth and suddenly looked up at him in disbelief. "Grandpa Yu, what did you say? My father?" Chapter 443. "So Gu Dajiang is here." Grandpa Yu was shocked by her sudden raised voice. Gu Yundong could not help but stand up. "I didn't hear wrongly. Did you just say my father? Have you seen my father?" Seeing this, Grandpa Yu nodded. "Yes, your father is in Wanqing Prefecture and has been looking for you." Gu Yundong's breathing suddenly quickened. The surprise caught her off guard, and her hands began to tremble slightly. She hurriedly asked, "Then where is he now? Where is my father now? Can you take me to him?" "He went out yesterday and hasn't returned yet." After Grandpa Yu finished speaking, he saw her frown and looked disappointed. He hurriedly added, "But you don't have to worry. Your father usually comes back every 2 to 3 days. He heard that there was news of you yesterday and left in a hurry. I didn't have time to ask him where he was going. If he doesn't find you, he will still come back. He lives in the same courtyard as us. You'll see him in a day or 2. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief and sat back down. The joy on her face was still on. Tong Shui Tao, who was beside her, was also extremely excited. Unexpectedly, after they had just arrived at Wanqing Prefecture, while they were at a loss as to how to buy Musi, the heavens gave them such a huge surprise. Great, there was finally news of old master. Gu Yundong calmed down a little and asked the owner of the wonton shop to pour 2 cups of tea. She then spoke again. Grandpa Yu, can you tell me about my father? How did you meet him? How is he now? Your father has really suffered a lot to find you. After receiving the help of Gu Yundong's basket of food, the three of them decided to come to Wanqing Prefecture. Initially, Gu Yundong's family had set off less than half an hour earlier than them. They had thought that they could catch up to her if they were fast. They could travel together so that they could take care of each other. Unexpectedly, they never met again, but that was normal. At that time, there were too many people coming this way. It was crowded, and they were all in a hurry to travel. It was indeed not easy to meet again. Later on, they arrived at Wanqing Prefecture. However, the city gate of Wanqing Prefecture was also closed, preventing anyone from entering. However, even at the city gate, there were people here who offered porridge for free. They could last for a while. The Yu family had also looked for Gu Yundong, but there had been no news. It was only when the new emperor ascended the throne, the city gate opened, and a new order was issued that they finally heaved a sigh of relief. Just like Gu Yundong's choice back then, the Yu family did not intend to return to their hometown, so they took root in Wanqing Prefecture. Unfortunately, they had no backing or money. In the end, they were assigned to a remote village by the local government. Not only was that place remote, but it was also especially poor. It was very difficult for men and women to marry, and the land was very barren. If they stayed in that village, they would probably live a hard life for the rest of their lives. After a discussion, the Yu family decided to register in the village. However, they went to the prefectural city to find work. At the very least, they had to try their luck. They still had some money on them, so they rented a small courtyard. However, it was easier said than done to find work in the prefectural city for those who had no roots, especially since there were many refugees who had escaped from the famine here. They could endure hardship and demand low wages. Now, Grandpa Ye's son was helping someone move the goods. His grandson was working in a small shop, but the salary was pitifully low. Even so, he cherished this job. After all, if he didn't do it, there would be countless people waiting in line to do it. Chapter 444. Where my father lives, they met Gu Dajiang more than a month after they settled down. At first, Grandpa Ye's son, who was helping people move the goods, overheard someone asking Gu Yundong's name when he was chatting with someone. At that time, he did not know who this person was, but Gu Yundong's name was too familiar. She could be considered their family's benefactor. He went over and asked Gu Dajiang a few questions. Only then did he realize that this was Gu Yundong's father. Didn't Miss Gu look for her father at the city gate of Qingyuan Prefecture? When your father heard that we had seen you, he was overjoyed. Grandpa Yu said, unfortunately at that time, we all thought that you had come to Wanqing Prefecture, so your father has been staying here to search for you. He does everything. He followed my son to carry goods, wash horses, and pour night urine. He goes wherever there's work. The money he earned is all used to find you. He asked the peddlers on the streets to help him. He went to the government office and gave money to the constables and asked the passing escorts to look for you. The copper coins on him are only enough for him to eat. Originally, he planned to sleep under the bridge in a dilapidated temple. Those places don't cost money. We dragged him to live in the small courtyard we rented. Back then, you left us a basket of sweet potatoes and saved the lives of our family of 3. When we saw your father, could we not give him a place to live? Gu Yundong was stunned. How was that possible? How could Gu Dajiang be in such dire straits? He can read and is very smart. My father used to be an accountant. How could he? Even if he was a refugee, even if it was not easy to find work in the prefecture capital, very few people could read in this day and age. It wasn't difficult for Gu Dajiang to find a decent job with his ability. Grandpa Yu sighed. But the shops and restaurants that need literate people won't allow him to run out of the prefectural city to look for people every other day. As long as Gu Dajiang heard any news about his family, he would rush over eagerly. Unfortunately, none of it was true. Gu Yundong clenched her fists and suddenly found it difficult to breathe. That's right. She had taken it for granted. She had always thought that she didn't have to worry about Gu Dajiang. As long as he avoided the calamity and didn't return to the old Gu family, he would be able to live well without old Gu and Patriarch Gu suppressing him. However, she ignored the fact that in Gu Dajiang's heart, nothing could compare to his wife and children. There was nothing more urgent than finding them. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Grandpa Yu thought of her clothes and the maidservant beside her and realized that her life should be good. Now that she heard that her biological father had been suffering to find them, she definitely didn't feel good. Fortunately, the hardships are over. Wait patiently for another 2 days. Dajiang will be back soon, and you and your father will meet. From now on, your family will reunite and live a good life. Gu Yundong took a deep breath and suppressed the bitterness in her heart. When she looked up again, there was already a smile on her lips. Yes, you're right. We'll be reunited soon. Sir, can I see where my father lives? Of course. Grandpa Yu was very happy. Come to my place. Perhaps your father will be back by the time we get home. Gu Yundong was also looking forward to it. She gave the money to the owner of the wonton shop and helped Grandpa Yu up. Grandpa Yu waved his hand. There's no need to help me. I'm still energetic. Chapter 445. Yu family. Grandpa Yu was overjoyed and strode forward to lead the way. However, this journey seemed to be a little far. By the time they arrived at his place, they had been walking for nearly 2 hours. Grandpa Yu looked a little embarrassed. He was used to walking, so he did not realize that there were 2 delicate young ladies following behind him. He had completely forgotten that Gu Yundong had also fled all the way here. Her stamina was not inferior to his. The Yu family's courtyard was actually very remote. It could be considered a slum in the prefectural city. The surroundings were filled with indecent people, and the road was filled with potholes. One could feel all kinds of smells when they walked into the alley. The people here were dressed in shabby clothes. When they saw Gu Yundong, who looked like a young lady from a wealthy family, everyone glanced at them. However, when they saw that it was the Yu family, some people with ill intentions could only sigh regretfully. After all, the 4 strong men of the Yu family had all fled here. They were used to seeing dead people and were not to be trifled with. Gu Yundong and Tong Shui Tao pretended not to see those gazes and entered the Yu family's courtyard without looking sideways. It was really a small courtyard. It was even smaller than Aunt Kes' house where she lived back then. There was only 1 room. Then there was the small kitchen, the outhouse, and a small courtyard. Just because it was small, the rent was cheap. Fortunately, there were only 4 men. It was fine to squeeze in the same room. In the past, the conditions were even worse when they escaped. Now, it was just a matter of adding 2 bed planks to the room. Grandpa Yu let them sit and poured water for them with 2 thick clay bowls. Then, he asked, Yundong, since you've settled down in the Xuanhe Prefecture, why did you come to Wanqing Prefecture this time? Gu Yundong took a sip of water. Although he did not add anything, it was still very refreshing and sweet. Grandpa Yu, you know about my mother's condition. We found a doctor to treat her. The doctor said that he was lacking an herb. Someone said that Wanqing Prefecture's Xiyuan family had this herb, so I came over to see if they could part with it. When Grandpa Yu heard about the Xiyuan family, he frowned. The Xiyuan family is rich and powerful. They're not to be trifled with. They don't lack money. It's difficult to get them to give you medicine. It was difficult, but she had to try no matter how difficult it was. Grandpa Yu, do you know who has the highest status in the Xiyuan family? Grandpa Yu thought for a moment. It should be that 2nd young master. I heard that 2nd young master married the daughter of the prefecture magistrate. That eldest young master is not in good health. He never goes out. When old master Xiyuan goes out, he always brings that 2nd young master along. It seems that more than half of the Xiyuan family's businesses are managed by 2nd young master. Gu Yundong pursed his lips. How can I meet that 2nd young master? Grandpa Yu was shocked. That's hard to say. You want to meet 2nd young master Xiyuan? Ask him for the herb? It was probably impossible to buy it. Gu Yundong wanted to understand the 2nd young master first and see if she could find a breakthrough from him. As she was thinking, a voice suddenly came from outside. Father, I'm back. That person's voice was loud and clear, but he was very thin. When he entered, he was stunned when he saw the 2 girls in the house. He immediately walked out in embarrassment and patted the dust off his body before entering again. Father, this is Yundong. Don't you recognize her? Grandpa Yu asked happily. Yundong also stood up and greeted, Uncle Yu, long time no see. Uncle Yu widened his eyes and looked at Yundong in shock. This is Dajiang's daughter? Chapter 446. Uncle Yes help. Yes. Grandpa Yu looked proud, as if Yundong was his granddaughter. Uncle Yu looked at Yundong a few times, but he could not associate her with the sloppy person whose gender was unknown. It had only been half a year. They were still dressed in shabby, thin, and weak clothes, but the girl from the Gu family looked like a young lady from a rich family. This disparity simply made people unable to be jealous. However, Uncle Yu was still very happy to see her. Grandpa Yu told him the process of meeting Yundong, and finally talked about the Xian residence. When he heard that Yundong wanted to see second young master, Uncle Yu could not help but frown. I've seen second young master once. Last time, someone wanted to build a relationship with the Xian family and specially stopped second young master. Second young master did not even give him the corner of his eye before that person was dragged away by his guards. If you want to see him, you may have to do what? Uncle Yu glanced at Yundong and coughed twice. He said in embarrassment, the second young master of the Xian family is vulnerable to beautiful women. As soon as he finished speaking, he was slapped hard by Grandpa Yu. What are you talking about? Do you want Yundong to seduce that pervert? Father, I didn't mean that. That second young master is a lustful man, but his wife isn't easy to get along with either. She's also the daughter of the Prefecture magistrate. I'm just reminding the Gu girl not to appear in front of second young master rashly, so that she can avoid trouble. The Gu girl was very good-looking now. If she went to look for second young master directly, it would be no different from sending herself to his bed. Yundong was stunned for a moment. SH smiled and said, Thank you for your kind intentions, Uncle Yu. I understand. I'll try my best to avoid second young master. In that case, wouldn't it be even more difficult? She frowned and thought for a moment before asking, Is there any way to enter the Xian residence? Enter the Xian residence? This time, Grandpa Yu and Uncle Yu fell silent. After a long time, Uncle Yu thought of the basket of things on the way to escape. He gritted his teeth and said, If you want to enter the Xian manor, I have a way. What is it? Yundong asked hurriedly. I know a friend who delivers vegetables to the kitchen of the Xian residence. I'll tell him. You can follow him in tomorrow morning to take a look. Yundong's eyes lit up. Really? Yes, but you can't walk around. If something happens and my friend is implicated, he won't care about you. Instead, he'll claim that he doesn't know you. Yundong knew this rule. She did not want to implicate others. Besides, that person was only bringing her in because Uncle Yu had used a favor. She immediately nodded solemnly. I understand. Uncle Yu glanced at her again and turned to leave. He was going to talk to his friend. Yundong and her maidservant had been staying at the Yu residence. Unfortunately, the sky was about to turn dark, but Dajiang still hadn't returned. The Yu family's grandson had returned and was shocked to see Yundong. Seeing that it was getting late, Yundong left the Yu family with Tong Xue Tao. Since she knew that Dajiang would return, she could only calm down and wait for him. When they went out, Uncle Yu sent them off. There were a few hooligans in the alley. When they saw Uncle Yu, they immediately felt very regretful. They could only watch Yundong and her maidservant leave with burning eyes. The next morning, Yundong followed Uncle Yes' instructions and went to wait outside the Xian residence. She was wearing a rough hemp garment and tied her hair up. Her chest was flattened, and her eyebrows were even thickened. She looked like a small worker. Chapter 447. Our Yundong not long after, they saw a middle-aged man and a young man pushing a cart of vegetables over. Yundong hurriedly went forward. After she introduced herself, the middle-aged man silently led her forward. However, he kept a sullen expression and did not look too happy. This did not matter. Yundong just had to go in and take a look. Tong Xue Tao waited in the alley beside them. She was worried. even though Gu Yundong asked her to wait for Gu Dajiang at the Yu residence. She refused. The middle-aged man pushed the vegetables into the back door of the Xian residence. When he saw the butler, he immediately put on a smile and praised him. Gu Yundong did not comment on this. It was just for the sake of living. There was still a distance from the backyard to the kitchen. Although Gu Yundong's head was lowered, the corners of his eyes kept drifting around. The Xian manor was indeed as rich and powerful as the rumors said. Not to mention the maids and servants who came and went, even the corridor they saw along the way, be it the workmanship or the carving, was very exquisite. Coupled with the trays held by the maidservant who walked past her, there were either jade bowls or jade plates on them. It was simply extravagant. Compared to them, she was simply worlds apart. She was not even qualified to be looked at. Gu Yundong's heart ached. Suddenly, Gu Yundong's ears pricked up when he heard the low voices of two maids. That person is really pitiful. He was tortured by second young madam and beaten up by second young master. Who asked him to recognize the wrong person? Sigh, poor thing. Cough, cough. The butler who was leading the way suddenly coughed heavily. The two maids were shocked and immediately shut their mouths. They lowered their heads and quickly walked away. Gu Yundong lowered her head and pretended not to hear her. Not long after, the few of them walked into the kitchen. The butler was very arrogant. He ordered Gu Yundong to move baskets of vegetables down. Put it here. Hey, be gentle. You're so clumsy. You can't even do a good job. Why are these vegetables so disheveled? They're all over the place. The chef will nag again later. Place these vegetables in order. Why are you casually placing this basket here? There are people coming and going. What if they trip? If they're holding something master wants in their hands and trip themselves over, you won't be able to compensate. Gu Yundong was speechless. She endured it. However, no matter how much she wanted to endure it, she did not even have the chance to leave the kitchen. It was really annoying. However, the worker who came with the middle-aged man thought that she was here to snatch work from him. He had disliked her since they first met, and now, he was even going against her. Gu Yundong felt that it was a mistake to follow the delivery man. After unloading the last basket of vegetables, she asked the butler where the toilet was. Unexpectedly, the butler glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. What toilet? You want to use the toilet in the Xian residence? Aren't you done with your work? Bear with it until you get back. Gu Yundong was speechless. She almost wanted to curse aloud. Just as she was wondering if she should find another excuse, she suddenly saw a middle-aged woman walk in valiantly. Gu Yundong took a glance and saw that although this woman was very imposing, the clothes she was wearing did not match her at all. It was as if a country woman was wearing the clothes of a noblewoman. The woman glanced around the kitchen and said, "Where's our Yundong's bird's nest? Is it ready?" Chapter 448. Gu Dajiang's voice. Gu Yundong widened her eyes and looked at the woman in shock. She almost responded when someone called her name. Fortunately, she immediately realized that the woman was not referring to her. The old woman in the kitchen quickly brought over a pot of bird's nest and smiled brightly. "It's here. It was stewed early in the morning. Hurry up and send it to concubine Gu." Gu Yundong was speechless. She almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Her surname was Gu, and her name was also Yundong? Not only did they have the same given name, but they also had the same surname. The woman snorted coldly. "Our Yundong is the person second young master loves the most now. All of you are snobs. You don't take her seriously at all. I just asked you to stew the bird's nest. You've been delaying for so long, and you want me to come over personally to get it. If there's a next time, I'll sell all of you." With that, she carried the bird's nest and walked away arrogantly. As soon as she disappeared, the few old women in the kitchen spat at her back. "You really think too highly of yourself. Your daughter is just a concubine, and you still think she's a proper master? How shameless. Just wait. Second young mistress is not free yet. When she's free, who knows how long concubine Gu will be able to hold the position." Seeing how brazen they were and how they dared to complain in front of the delivery man, It was obvious that they did not take concubine Gu and her mother seriously. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Hearing concubine Gu made her feel uncomfortable all over. The steward had just finished speaking to the middle-aged man and let them leave. It was too late for Gu Yundong to find an opportunity to leave. She could only frown and leave the kitchen in defeat. However, she learned that the second young master of the Xie family had taken in a new concubine who was her namesake. Forget it. Forget it. That's not important. They just had the same name. How could she not allow it? Second young master seemed to dote on this concubine quite a lot now. Perhaps she could start from her. Gu Yundong thought as she followed the middle-aged man out of the back door of the Xie residence. As soon as he came out, the middle-aged man said to Gu Yundong, "All right, I've done what brother you asked of me. I've returned the favor I owed him. That's all. You don't have to follow me anymore." Gu Yundong nodded. "Thank you. No need." The middle-aged man asked the worker beside him to push the empty cart away. When the worker saw that Gu Yundong was not fighting with him for the job, he immediately became happy. Before he left, he even gave her a smile. Gu Yundong sighed and walked towards the alley. Tong Xuetao was still there. Unexpectedly, after taking a few steps, she suddenly saw a group of people gathered there, pointing and talking about something. Gu Yundong frowned. Tong Xuetao had already seen her and hurried over. "Miss, you're out? How are you? Are you all right?" She looked Gu Yundong up and down nervously. Tong Xuetao was also wearing men's clothes. After all, she had wanted to follow them in at the beginning. Unfortunately, her plan had failed before she could say it. Gu Yundong shook her head and pointed at the crowd. "What happened there? I think someone was thrown out by the servants of the Xie family just now. Said that he was beaten. It's quite serious." Gu Yundong suddenly recalled what the two maids had said. He must have been beaten up by the second young master of the Xie family, right? She had no intention of meddling in other people's business. She brought Tong Xuetao and walked straight through the crowd. However, just as she passed by that person, a faint voice suddenly sounded in her ear. Yundong. Chapter 449. Finally meeting Gu Dajiang, Gu Yundong's ears were sharp. When she heard these two words, her body stiffened. She suddenly turned her head to look at the person lying on the ground. With someone blocking her way, she immediately pulled that person away roughly. Then, she squatted down and brushed away the hair that covered half of that person's face. In the next moment, when she saw the true appearance of the man on the ground, her hands began to tremble violently. "Miss, what's wrong?" Tong Xuetao saw that something was wrong with her and hurriedly asked in a low voice. Gu Yundong's throat was tight and she could not even make a sound. She suddenly grabbed her trembling right wrist and pressed it against the man's neck with great difficulty. She felt that the pulse under her fingers was still strong. Only then did she force herself to calm down. She struggled to help the man up. The onlookers quickly advised, "Little brother, this is someone thrown out by the Xie family. Don't be a busybody, lest you get into trouble." Gu Yundong suddenly raised her head and glared fiercely at that person. Her throat rolled and she finally spat out a cold word. "Scram! You?" That person tried to persuade her out of goodwill but was scolded instead. He was instantly annoyed, but when he saw Gu Yundong's fierce and cold expression, he was a little terrified and left dejectedly with his head lowered. Gu Yundong lowered her head again and said to Tong Xuetao, "Come. Be careful. Carry him back to the inn first." "Oh, okay, Mississippi." Tong Xuetao was strong. She hurriedly squatted down and carefully helped the man onto her back. She did not dare to use too much strength. She tried her best to bend over to make the unconscious person on her back feel more comfortable. After walking for a while, Tong Xuetao asked, "Miss, who is this?" Gu Yundong's nerves were still tense. The corners of her mouth were tightly pursed, and blood-lust surged in her eyes. She took a long time to answer Tong Xuetao, but her voice was dry and hoarse. "He's my father." Tong Xuetao's eyes widened in shock. Yes, it's old master?" "Yes." Gu Yundong never expected to see Gu Dajiang under such circumstances. The man leaning on Tong Shuetao's back was extremely thin. His image was even worse than what Grandpa Yu had said about Gu Dajiang. He had been thrown out by the Xie family and beaten up like this. Gu Yundong's face was ashen, and she clenched her fists tightly. The three of them quickly arrived at the inn. The waiter still remembered Gu Yundong's attire before she went out today. At that time, he found it strange, but this was the guest's privacy, so he did not ask further. However, he had a deep impression of it. Hence, when he saw her return with an unconscious person on her back, he quickly went up to her. "Miss, what's wrong? Please help me find a doctor." Gu Yundong gave the waiter a piece of silver and helped Gu Dajiang upstairs. The door opened and the two of them carefully placed the man on the bed. Perhaps because it affected his wound, Gu Dajiang couldn't help but groan as he lay on the bed. His brows were furrowed. "Be gentle," Gu Yundong said hurriedly. Seeing his uncomfortable expression, she felt helpless for the first time. She didn't know how to move her fingers to minimize Gu Dajiang's pain. Fortunately, the waiter immediately brought the doctor over. This was the doctor from the nearest medical center. His medical skills were quite brilliant. The moment he entered, he saw Gu Dajiang covered in blood. He frowned and instructed Gu Yundong, "Go get a basin of hot water first." Chapter 450. The scarred Gu Dajiang Tong Shuetao quickly turned around to get hot water. Only then did Dr. Yu carefully check the wounds on Gu Dajiang's body. His clothes had been removed by the scissors, so Gu Yundong could not look at him anymore. She took a deep breath and turned around. The waiter stayed to help. As he followed the doctor's instructions, he whispered, "Oh my God! Why is he like this? So bloody. Will he be unable to move his lower body in the future? Oh my God! Why is there such a big wound on his shoulder? Is it because he was scalded? It's all blistered. No, who did this? This is too inhumane. Did his finger break from someone stepping on it?" Gu Yundong's back was facing the bed. The more she listened, the uglier her expression became. The veins on the back of her hand throbbed, and her eyes were cold. Dr. Yu could not help but reprimand him. "Shut up. What are you shouting for? Give me the scissors." The waiter didn't dare to speak. He didn't know who the person on the bed was, but it didn't seem to have much to do with that girl, right? After all, this person was thin and had a rough face. He looked like one of those laborers. There was no telling who this guy had offended, but he was probably saved by Miss Gu out of kindness. Tong Shuetao brought hot water over. Seeing that Miss' expression was not right, she quickly helped her sit down and said softly, "Miss, don't worry. Old master will be fine." Gu Yundong closed his eyes slightly. "I know." Faint movements came from behind. The waiter stopped making a fuss and only asked some questions occasionally. But these words still reached Gu Yundong's ears, and her fingers tightened. After a long time, he heard Dr. Yes' voice. "Mississippi." He had heard the waiter call her Mississippi. "This patient's injuries are a little serious. They'll treat him for the time being, but the medicine to be used later is probably not cheap. You, here." Gu Yundong took out a banknote. "Give him the best medicine to minimize his pain. Don't leave any future troubles. If you need anything, just tell me." "I sure." Seeing that she did not look very well dressed, Dr. Yu was a little worried before. When he saw that she had taken out 100 taels of silver, he hurriedly agreed. The waiter could not help but widen his eyes. Wasn't this someone she had casually saved on the way? Wasn't this too generous? The doctor had already walked to the table. He took a brush and paper and wrote down the prescription. Then he handed it to the waiter. "Please make a trip to our family's medical center to get these medicine." The waiter quickly took it and agreed happily. He was smart and knew that this girl seemed to value the man on the bed. If he helped her run more errands, he would definitely be rewarded. After the waiter left, Dr. Yu washed his hands and walked to her side to tell her about Gu Dajiang's condition. There are 3 most serious injuries on the patient's body. One of them is a burn on his shoulder. It should have been scalded by boiling water. This is fine. I've squeezed out the mucus in the bubble. I'll apply the ointment later and it'll be fine when new skin grows in the future. Yundong exhaled slowly and nodded slightly. The second was when he was hit by a heavy object on the fingers of his left hand. 2 of the bones in his fingers were broken. As soon as Dr. Yu finished speaking, Tong Shuetao covered her mouth and gasped. Dr. Yu looked up at her and continued to say to Yundong, who had a tense expression, "I'll use a splint to fixate the fingers. He has to recuperate slowly. It's best not to carry heavy objects in the future." Chapter 451. Miss something. The third injury is the injury on his back. Dr. Yu sighed. This is the most serious. The person who hit him is not skilled. His external injuries are serious, and his internal injuries are not easy either. Internal injuries. Yundong immediately thought of the bottle of internal injuries medicine that Shao Qingyuan had given her. She quickly searched her sleeve and actually took out the small porcelain bottle from her space. She said to Dr. Yu, "This is medicine for internal injuries. Take a look and see if it will conflict with the medicine you prescribed." Dr. Yu was stunned for a moment. He poured out a pill and sniffed it. Then he scratched it with his nail and tasted a bit. After a while, his eyes lit up and he hurriedly nodded. "It's useful. They'll feed him one now." He took the medicine and quickly crushed it. He mixed it with water and fed it to Dajiang. Seeing that he had consciously swallowed it, the doctor heaved a sigh of relief and came back to say, "You also need to pay more attention to his external injuries. This wound is prone to festering pus, and it may cause a fever. That's very dangerous." Yundong knew that if the wound was not treated properly, it was easy to get inflammation and infection, especially in this weather. One could get a fever if they were not careful. In this era, it was very easy to lose one's life if one had a fever. Dr. Yu told her all the things she needed to pay attention to. At this moment, the waiter returned with the medicine. He first took the ointment and applied it on Dajiang before getting the waiter to go to the kitchen to boil the herbs. By the time he was done, several hours had passed. Dr. Yu helped Dajiang put on his clothes before getting up to wipe his sweat. He said, "It's up to him now. If there's anything wrong, get someone to look for me. If his condition improves, he'll come over tomorrow to change his medicine." "Thank you, Dr. Yu." Yundong sent him out gratefully. The waiter also went downstairs smartly. After a while, he brought the food over. "Miss, it's already late. You should eat lunch first." "Put it down. It's been hard on you today. You should eat too." "It's not hard. I'll go out first. Miss, enjoy your meal. If you have any instructions, feel free to call me." He left the room and closed the door gently. "Miss, let's eat first." Tong Shuetao called her softly. It was rare for her to speak softly, because Miss seemed to be in a bad mood, and Master's condition was not optimistic. Yundong was not in the mood to eat. She let Tong Shuetao eat first, but she walked to the bed and sat there looking at the unconscious Dajiang. She suppressed the anger in her heart and slowly closed her eyes. After a long time, she looked at the person on the bed again. Dajiang was very thin. He had originally been very thin, but he wasn't as haggard as he was now. He looked like he had aged a few years. She thought that she was different from Dajiang. In her heart, Dajiang was only someone who existed in her memories. If not for Madame Yang and the others, she would not have cared about his life at all. To her, Dajiang was just a familiar stranger. Later on, after spending time with her mother, Yunshu, and Yunka, Yundong's heart gradually warmed. Dajiang's presence in her memory was so strong. Therefore, in her memories, Dajiang's image gradually became three-dimensional in her mind. He became flesh and blood, and she had feelings for him. Perhaps it was because she remembered that Dajiang was too capable that she felt that even if he was alone, he would still lead a good life. At least, it would be much better than her bringing up her mother and siblings. He might even have already started a big business. However, she had overlooked the most important point. Chapter 452. Dajiang Awakens. Dajiang valued relationships. He valued his family more than himself. In his heart, his wife was ignorant of the world. His eldest daughter was sentimental, and his youngest son and daughter were too young. How could such a family of 4 survive safely in the wilderness surrounded by jackals? tigers, and leopards. Of course, he had the ability to do something, but he couldn't wait. He was afraid that if he was a little slower, he might not be able to find his wife and children again. Perhaps in Gu Dajiang's heart, he didn't dare to hope that his 4 family members were all alive. He could only think of finding as many as possible. He could not slow down. Therefore, as Grandpa Yu had said, other than the money for food, he had used all the money to find his wife and children. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth were straight. At this moment, she finally felt the deep love Gu Dajiang gave her. "Miss, don't worry. Old Master will definitely be fine. Let's use the best medicine." Tong Shuetao had already finished eating. She turned around and saw that Miss was still sitting there motionless, as if she had suffered a huge blow. For a moment, she felt a little sad and guilty. If she had gone over to bring Old Master back to find a doctor the moment he was thrown out by the Xine family, would Old Master's injuries not have become so serious? It was all the Xine family's fault. They had gone too far. What right did they have to beat Old Master into such a state? "Miss, eat something first. After you're full, you'll have the strength to take care of Master when he wakes up, right?" Gu Yundong nodded slightly and reached out to touch Gu Dajiang's forehead. Fortunately, he did not have a fever. Only then did she sit at the table and eat. Tong Shuetao diligently fetched hot water again. Seeing that Gu Dajiang's face was covered in sweat, she carefully wiped it for him. As Gu Yundong was eating, she suddenly thought of something. "Shuetao, go to the Yu residence later. We agreed yesterday that we would go to the Yu residence when we came out of the Xian residence. It's already this hour. I'm afraid Grandpa Yu will be worried about us." Tong Shuetao also thought of this and suddenly slapped her head. "I forgot too. All right, I'll go over immediately. By the way, tell Grandpa Yu that my father has been found." After a pause, she added, "Don't say anything about him being injured." "Understood, Mississippi." After Tong Shuetao left, only Gu Yundong and Gu Dajiang were left in the room. She twisted the handkerchief again and wiped Gu Dajiang's face. Unexpectedly, just as she approached, the person in front of her suddenly opened her eyes. Gu Yundong was stunned. Gu Dajiang was also stunned. He looked at Gu Yundong with uncertainty. After a long while, he said hoarsely, "Yundong, it's me." Gu Dajiang smiled. "Why are you wearing men's clothes today? Your eyebrows have become so thick. I almost didn't recognize you." Gu Yundong pursed her lips and asked hesitantly, "Are you awake?" Gu Dajiang reached out his hand and realized that he was lying on his stomach. His body was in great pain. A sharp pain spread to his head, and cold sweat dripped down. Gu Dajiang grunted and knocked his head against the soft pillow again before closing his eyes. Gu Yundong panicked. She blurted out the name that she wanted to call him and yet had been stuck in her throat. "Father, did you pull on your wound? Where does it hurt?" Gu Dajiang's eyes widened as he looked at her in shock. Yundong. Chapter 453, Father and Daughter Reunion. "It's me, Dad." Gu Dajiang gasped. "I am not dreaming?" As he spoke, he grabbed Gu Yundong's hand with great force. He stared at Gu Yundong, afraid that he would blink and the person in front of him would suddenly disappear again. Gu Yundong slowly squatted down and let him hold her hand. He smiled and said, "Yes, you're not dreaming. Father, I'm in front of you. I'm fine. You found me." Gu Dajiang's eyes widened as he listened to her seriously. His lips trembled slightly, and his hand that was holding her trembled slightly too. Slowly, this trembling became more and more intense, just like the torrential emotions in his heart. Gu Yundong gently put her other hand on it and said gently, "Father, do you hurt anywhere? You're injured. The doctor said that you can't move around." Gu Dajiang finally blinked, but his voice was hoarse. "Yundong, is it really you?" "Yeah. It's really you? It's me. It's true. It's actually true. Dad." Gu Dajiang suddenly grinned. In the next moment, tears flowed out and slowly slid down his face to the pillow. "Dad, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm just happy. I'm happy." His voice was choked with emotion. After searching for so long, he was almost in despair. When the planks of the Xuyuan family hit him and he was thrown out on his last breath, the only regret in his heart was that he could not find his wife and children. He did not know if they were still alive or if they were waiting for him in heaven. He did not expect his daughter to be by his side the moment he woke up. He was satisfied. His wounds didn't hurt at all. He was glad. Had never been so glad. Yundong quickly wiped his tears with a handkerchief. The corners of her eyes could not help but tear up. Her eyes turned red. "I'm happy too." Dajiang grinned like a child. But in the next moment, he suddenly raised his head slightly and looked behind Yundong. However, there was no one there. His hand could not help but tremble slightly. He wanted to speak, but he did not know how to. Yundong quickly knew who he was looking for. She smiled and said, "Mother and Yunshu and Yunka are all fine." Dajiang was stunned. His gaze landed on her again. Yundong continued, "Back then, I saw that the Qingyuan Prefecture was in chaos. I was afraid that I could not protect my mother and younger siblings, so I brought them to the Xuanhe Prefecture. Now they have settled down in Yongfu village under the Xuanhe Prefecture. They are all at home waiting for us to return." After a pause, she said, "I'm sorry, father. I didn't fulfill my promise to you." "No, you did the right thing. You did the right thing." Dajiang's voice became lighter. Knowing that his family was safe, he seemed to be in high spirits. "There's nothing more important than your safety. I didn't think it through back then. I didn't expect the city gate of Qingyuan Prefecture to be tightly shut, causing chaos. What about you?" Yundong did not want him to continue blaming himself. She changed the topic and asked, "Why did father come to Wanqing Prefecture?" "Actually, I went to Qingyuan Prefecture to look for you. I even met Bao Chunhua and his wife. They said that they had seen you and saw you leave the city gate with their own eyes. Unfortunately, they didn't know where you went after you left. I even went." She paused and did not tell him that she had been to Gu village. She would take it slow. So many things had happened in Gu village. She had to tell her father, but she did not want to say it yet. Chapter 454. That woman should die. Dajiang was stunned. He really didn't expect her to have been to Qingyuan Prefecture. He pursed his lips and frowned. "Back then, I thought that you would wait for me in Qingyuan Prefecture, so I kept looking for you there. Later on," he lowered his voice, "I bumped into your aunt later." Qingyuan? Yundong was flabbergasted. "Isn't she dead?" "Dead." Dajiang frowned. "When did she die?" "She was still alive when I met her." Although he and Qingyuan were siblings, their relationship was really weak. It could even be said that they had become enemies. From his tone, it was obvious. "I met my uncle." He said so. However, this was not important. "What happened after you met my aunt?" "She said that you came to Wanqing Prefecture." Actually, I didn't believe her at first. However, Dajiang later asked around. There were indeed a few people who told him that they had met such a family that had gone to Wanqing Prefecture before the Qingyuan Prefecture fell into chaos. That was why he came to Wanqing Prefecture. Later on, he met the Yu family. He didn't expect the Yu family to receive Yundong's help. Even the Yu family said that they were coming this way. That was why Dajiang had been looking for them in Wanqing Prefecture for more than half a year. Yundong sighed inwardly. It was really a freak combination of factors. They missed each other just like that. If she had gone to Wanqing Prefecture back then, wouldn't they have met sooner? However, Qingyuan was the one who deserved to die. Others might have really seen them moving this way, but Qingyuan knew very well back then. She had even asked Fu Ming to bring Master Chen to chase after them and wanted to sell her nephew and niece. Anger rose in Yundong's heart. It would be best if Qingyuan was dead. If she was not, Yundong would kill her. She snorted coldly. Seeing the fatigue flash across Dajiang's face, she knew that she had said too much. She would talk about this slowly in the future. He was still injured and should be resting. She had neglected it. "Father, you're still injured. It's more important to recover first. Now that we're reunited, there's plenty of time to talk in the future. I still have many things to tell you." "Okay." He had found his wife and children, so he naturally had to live well. Recovering from his injuries was most important. He could not go back to see his wife and children like this. By the way, eat something first. I've been asking the waiter to prepare sweet porridge. Father, fill your stomach first. Then, drink the medicine prescribed by the doctor before you rest. As she spoke, she hurriedly opened the door and let the waiter bring the warm porridge over. Dajiang looked at Yundong's back and smiled. Yundong fed him small bites. It was not easy for him to finish it. After drinking the medicine, he really wanted to sleep. She reached out and adjusted Dajiang's pillow. His back was injured, so he could only lie on his stomach or sideways. He couldn't move too much, or it was easy to pull at his wound. Dajiang was really tired and his body hurt a lot. He actually couldn't bear to close his eyes. He wanted to see his daughter more. However, he really couldn't take it anymore. As soon as he closed his eyes, he quickly fell asleep. Tong Shuetao only returned when the sky was about to turn dark. When she heard that Dajiang had woken up, she immediately became happy. Miss, go and rest. I'll guard master. You keep watch for the first half of the night. I'll do it for the second. All right. Yundong went to the room next door to rest, but she did not sleep well. She was always worried that something would happen to Dajiang. Before midnight, she came over to replace Tong Shuetao. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. Dajiang didn't have a fever, and his injuries were recovering. Chapter 455. Yundong is really good-looking after dawn. Dr. Yu came over again. After showing it to Dajiang, he heaved a sigh of relief. I'll change his bandage first. Continue taking the medicine I prescribed yesterday. Thank you, Dr. Yu. Dajiang was in a deep sleep, but he was still woken up by the pain of changing the bandage. When Dr. Yu saw him open his eyes, he smiled kindly. How do you feel? Does it hurt anywhere? Do you feel choked or difficult to breathe? Dajiang quickly realized his identity. No, other than the pain in my wound, everything else is fine. With that, he hurriedly went to look for Yundong. When he saw that she was still there, he heaved a sigh of relief. Except, how did his daughter become so good-looking? She had washed off her thick eyebrows from yesterday and changed her clothes. These clothes looked expensive and her face was rosy. She was actually more beautiful than before. After Dr. Yu changed the bandage and gave some instructions, he left. Yundong walked to the edge of the bed and sat down. Seeing that Dajiang was staring at her, she could not help but find it strange. Father, what are you looking at? Dajiang paused and smiled. Yundong is really good-looking. Yundong immediately felt a little embarrassed. How can a father praise his daughter like that? Father is telling the truth. He looked very proud. Unfortunately, he was injured and couldn't even lift his head. At the thought of his injury, Yundong could not help but frown. Father, why did the Xie family hit you so ruthlessly? They almost killed you. As she asked this question, Yundong's face was instantly filled with anger and a hint of killing intent. She didn't know how her father had offended the Xie family, but with her father's personality, he definitely wouldn't offend them to the point of getting himself killed. She wasn't going to let this go. Dajiang lowered his eyes slightly and thought of everything in the Xie residence. He slowly closed his eyes. After a while, he looked up and smiled. It's nothing. Am I not fine? It's over. If father doesn't want to tell me, I'll go to the Xie family to ask myself. Yundong. Yundong pursed her lips tightly and looked at him firmly. Dajiang smiled bitterly. How did you become so stubborn? Father, go ahead. Dajiang sighed secretly and said in a low voice, 2 days ago, I heard that the second young master of the Xie family wants to take in a concubine. That concubine's surname is Gu and her name is Yundong. Yundong's body suddenly froze. The words of the woman she had heard when she had disguised herself and sneaked into the kitchen of the Xie residence flashed across her mind. Yes, there was a concubine with the same name as hers in the Xie manor. Father thought, it was me? No wonder. No wonder he was unwilling to say it just now. Was he afraid that she would blame herself? Dajiang nodded. I heard that concubine Gu is from the countryside and fled here. She's 15 or 16 years old and is also good-looking. Moreover, she wasn't willing to be a concubine and was forcefully taken over by second young master. To get her, they even captured her mother and threatened her with her mother's life. All the signs indicated that this was most likely his daughter and wife. Gu Dajiang panicked. It wasn't so easy for him to find out anything else. However, at this moment, his wife and daughter were forced to become concubines and had no way of asking for help. He could not sit still. Gu Dajiang tried his best to sneak into the Xian residence. He was capable. It was not easy to enter the Xian family, but he found his way in. However, that was not the case at all. Chapter 456. Those three bastards. That person called Gu Yundong was indeed unwilling at first, but her mother was not captured by the second young master. Her mother voluntarily helped the second young master trick her daughter into coming in. Moreover, concubine Gu had only been in the Xian residence for a day, but she was already bewitched by the riches inside and willingly became the concubine of the second young master of the Xian residence. Gu Dajiang did not find out about this at first. As a complete stranger, he anxiously asked around for Gu Yundong's residence. After hiding in the Xian residence for a day, he was discovered. As it happened, it was the wife of the second young master of the Xian family, who was the daughter of the current prefecture magistrate of Wanqing Prefecture. When she saw Gu Dajiang, she also received news that this person was getting close to concubine Gu. Second young madam smiled. After sizing Gu Dajiang up, she suspected his relationship with concubine Gu. I heard that concubine Gu has a father. You're so concerned about her. Could you be her father? Gu Dajiang immediately denied it. Seeing this, second young madam became even more certain. Why are you nervous? Are you afraid that he'll use you to threaten concubine Gu? Gu Dajiang refused to admit it even more badly. However, regardless of whether second young madam was really certain or just in a bad mood, she said, if you admit your relationship with concubine Gu, he'll let you go. If you don't admit it, you're a thief who barged into my Xian manor. When she said this, her eyes turned sharp. She directly said to the guard of the Xian family, break his fingers. This is the price for daring to break into the Xian residence. Gu Dajiang didn't even have time to explain before his fingers were pressed to the ground. The guard knocked him over with a stick. He fell back in pain, but a maid behind him poured a hot teapot on him. In an instant, he was so hot that his entire body convulsed and his shoulders immediately blistered. However, his torture was not over yet. Someone had told concubine Gu. Concubine Gu brought second young master over and said that second young madam had deliberately found someone to impersonate her father to ruin her reputation. Only then did Gu Dajiang realize that he had mistaken her for someone else. Concubine Gu wasn't his daughter. Although her family had fled here, they had fled here when their ancestors were still alive. Second young master naturally could not reprimand second young madam. He was already in the wrong for taking a concubine. However, concubine Gu was his new favorite and she was still new. He had to stand up for her, right? Hence, he pushed all the blame to Gu Dajiang. He said that the man had pretended to be concubine Gu's father to enter the residence and swindle others, which was simply detestable. He got the guards to beat him up 20 times. Those people only threw him out when he was on the verge of death. Gu Yundong trembled when she heard that. These bastards did not care about human lives at all. One was to vent her anger. One was to trample on others in order to fight for favor. One was trying to pacify his wife and please his concubine for the sake of having two women. That was why they could casually take her father's life. Gu Yundong quickly lowered her head to prevent her father from seeing the fierceness in her eyes. I'm fine. Look, if not for this, I wouldn't have been able to see you, right? Gu Dajiang comforted her. Gu Yundong looked up and forced a smile. No, without this, she would have been able to see Gu Dajiang safe and sound in the Yu family. Not the father who was on the verge of death and was sweating from the pain. Gu Yundong took a deep breath and suppressed her anger. At this moment, Tong Shuetao entered the house. She leaned close to Gu Yundong's ear nervously and said, Miss, something seems to have happened. Chapter 457. Are they looking for us? Dajiang was stunned when he saw Tong Xuetao. And what did she call Yundong just now? Miss? He looked at the two of them in shock. Only then did Tong Xuetao realize that Dajiang had woken up. She hurriedly said respectfully, Master. Dajiang was speechless. Yundong asked Tong Xuetao, What happened? The latter suddenly reacted. She glanced at Dajiang and lowered her voice even more. Only Yundong could hear her. Young miss, I was at the entrance of the inn just now and saw the second young master of the Xie family coming over aggressively with 2 guards. Do you think he knows that we brought old master back and is here to settle the score? Yundong stood up. I'll go out and take a look. Take care of my father. Yes, my lady. Yundong opened the door and saw a rich man's son entering the inn with 2 guards. He was walking upstairs. Why would the second young master of the Xie family be so free? He even intervened when someone they didn't care about had been saved, and even personally brought people to settle the score? Yundong felt that it was unlikely. As expected, although the young master came up, he turned around and walked in another direction. Soon, the innermost room in the corridor was opened by a middle-aged man, who respectfully invited him in. As for the 2 guards at the back, they stopped at the door and stood outside dutifully. Before the middle-aged man closed the door, he said to the waiter outside, Go make a pot of good tea. Yes. The waiter immediately turned around and went downstairs. Yundong narrowed her eyes and immediately turned to enter the room beside her. She found the coarse linen clothes she had worn yesterday and quickly changed. Then, she casually stuffed her hair into her hat. Her eyebrows were thick, and her face was dark. Finally, he changed his shoes and came out. Coincidentally, the waiter had just gone upstairs. Yundong quickly took out a gun from her space. It was a toy gun. Because it was too vivid, Yundong used it to scare people. After all, in the apocalypse, all kinds of demons and ghosts had appeared after losing their humanity. When they saw good-looking women, they felt that they were easy to bully. Yundong had scared many people away with this toy gun. The bullet of this gun was round like a sugar ball. It would not hurt anyone, but it would definitely hurt the victim when shot from the muzzle. She aimed at the waiter's knee and fired 2 shots. The waiter bent his knees and almost threw the tray in his hand. Yundong was responsive and quickly supported him with one hand and the tray with the other. She asked in a low voice, Are you all right? The waiter gasped and looked up. Miss Gu, why are you dressed like this again? I have something to do outside. It's more convenient to dress like this. Yundong helped her up and asked, How are you? I don't know why, but my legs seem to have been hit by something. The waiter turned his head and looked, but he didn't find any stones. It hurts a little. I think you should sit over there and rest first. But... He glanced awkwardly at the tray in his hand. Yundong smiled. I'll send it to you. Huh? The waiter was surprised. Aren't you going out? I don't have anything urgent to do. I'm just delivering tea. It'll be done soon. Which room should I send it to? As Yundong spoke, she had already accepted the tray. Chapter 458. Secret recording. The waiter subconsciously pointed to the innermost room. Yundong nodded. All right, I'll do it. You've been helping me run errands for the past 2 days. Take it as my thanks. Before anyone could react, she had already left with the tray. Only then did the waiter reach out and rub the bend of his leg. Then he stood up straight and walked for a while. It didn't hurt anymore? He let out a sigh of relief and immediately thought about it. That's not right. He was so diligent in running errands for Miss Gu because he wanted a bonus. Could it be that Miss Gu was helping him deliver tea because she didn't want to pay him? The waiter cursed and wanted to change back. But when he walked over, he realized that it was too late. Yundong had already knocked on the door and entered in a flash. There were only 2 people in the room. One was a young master. He was the second young master of the Xie family, Zhiyuan. Opposite him was a middle-aged man. No one knew who he was. The 2 of them stopped talking when they saw her enter. Zhiyuan even stood up and instructed the 2 guards to remind him to buy something when they returned. After Gu Yundong put down the teapot and poured a cup for each of them, the middle-aged man said, "All right, you can leave. All right, please enjoy," Gu Yundong said in a rough voice and turned to leave. Unbeknownst to anyone, she had placed a recording pen in the compartment under the table and covered it with a tablecloth before leaving. The phone she used to scare Peng Zhongfei last time was almost out of battery. It was better not to take it out. Moreover, the phone was too big of a target and would be easily discovered. The recording pen was small, so it was easier to hide. Gu Yundong held the tray and left the room respectfully with her back arched. It was only when she walked out of the two guards' sight that she straightened her back. Unexpectedly, before she could go downstairs, she saw the waiter walking over anxiously. Miss Gu, actually, you don't have to help me. You're a guest of the inn. How can I tire you out? Besides, it's only right for me to run errands for you. You even rewarded me last time." Gu Yundong was so angry that she wanted to laugh. She threw the tray to him. "All right, it's just a small matter. Look at how nervous you are. I won't tell your shopkeeper that you're lazy." The waiter wiped the sweat from his forehead and smiled awkwardly. Gu Yundong gave him a piece of silver. "Let me ask you something else." The waiter's eyes suddenly lit up and he heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Miss Gu still needed him. It seemed that she was really kind just now. She was indeed a beautiful and kind girl. He immediately patted his chest and said, "Miss, if you want to know anything, feel free to ask. I want to ask, where is the nearest fair brokerage? Miss, do you want to buy servants?" Yes, this was not a problem. The waiter quickly told Gu Yundong about the two most reputable brokers in the vicinity. "So you're dressed like this to buy someone from the brokerage. That's good. You don't look like you'll be easily scammed." If she dressed like a young lady from a rich family, those people in the brokerage would definitely treat her as an ignorant girl. Gu Yundong was speechless. She nodded affirmatively. "Yes." As she spoke, someone called for the waiter. He quickly turned around and went downstairs. Only then did Gu Yundong shake her head and push open Gu Dajiang's room. Unexpectedly, the moment she entered, she saw Gu Dajiang and Tong Xuetao looking at each other in silence. Chapter 459. Fatherly love. Gu Yundong closed the door and asked curiously, "What's wrong?" Tong Xuetao shrank her neck and looked a little guilty. On the other hand, Gu Dajiang turned to look at his daughter and saw that she was wearing the same clothes as yesterday. Although he felt strange, he didn't ask further. However, he glanced at Tong Xuetao and said, Miss Tong said that she's the maidservant you bought? Her entire family is servants of the Gu family?" At this moment, Gu Dajiang still didn't know that there were 6 people in the Tong family. He thought that it was just her parents and her. Gu Yundong looked at Tong Xuetao, who laughed dryly. "I thought Miss had spoken to Master, so—" Gu Yundong could not help but laugh. She had thought that something was up. "Father, I have something to tell you too. I plan to buy 2 more servants to take care of you." She sat beside Gu Dajiang. Seeing that he was in good spirits, she couldn't help but smile. Gu Dajiang was stunned. He wanted to shake his head, but he realized that it was inconvenient. He hurriedly said, No need. Why would I need servants? Father, you're injured now. Someone has to take care of you." She and Tong Xuetao were both women, so it was inconvenient for them to wipe his body. Previously, she had asked the waiter to help, but he was already very busy. Yesterday, he had helped Dr. Yu for most of the day and was even scolded by the shopkeeper. If it weren't for the silver bonus, he probably wouldn't have treated her well today. Gu Dajiang also reacted. He did need help in this state. Previously, it was Dr. Yu who had brought him the chamber pot for him to relieve himself. Embarrassment flashed across his face. He agreed after all, but 1 is enough. I don't need 2. They'll be better soon. Don't waste money. Gu Yundong squatted down. Father, I'm doing a small business now. I have money. Although it's not much, it's enough to buy 2 servants. Yes, compared to the Xian residents, she was still very poor. However, Gu Dajiang had a serious expression. Just 1. It's not easy to do small business now. Save the silver as your dowry in the future. His daughter was already 15 years old. She would be of marriageable age soon. When the time came, it would be time to discuss marriage. In the past, when he was in the old Gu family, he was worried that his father and stepmother would cause trouble and that Yundong would not be able to find a good husband. Now that he had left the place and Yundong was so good, she would definitely be very happy in the future. Thinking of this, Gu Dajiang couldn't help but feel relieved. Seeing how insistent he was, Gu Yundong had no choice but to agree. Father, rest first. We'll be back soon. Be careful. When you look at people, don't judge them by their appearance. You have to see if they're honest. Those brokers are very smart. We won't buy any if the price is high. We can hire people too. Also, remember to buy just one. When Gu Yundong went out, she could still hear his worried reminders. Her heart was warm and sour. This was the love of an old father. Even though he knew that she already started her own small business, even though he knew that she could bring his mother and siblings all the way to the Shuanhe Prefecture, in his heart, she was still a child who had not grown up. No matter what she did, he would always be worried. Although Madame Yang was her mother, her situation was special. She looked more like her child. Now, in front of Gu Dajiang, she was the daughter who needed his care, even though he was lying in bed and couldn't do anything. Gu Yundong's smile widened. Looking at the sky outside, it seemed to be filled with joy from head to toe. Chapter 460. Xue Rong. When they arrived at the brokerage, Gu Yundong looked for the broker that the waiter had introduced. Hearing that she only planned to buy one person, the broker was still smiling and her attitude was exceptionally enthusiastic. Miss, are you planning to buy a man or a woman? What's the age requirement? Is there any taboo? Gu Yundong did not speak in a rough voice. It was too tiring. She had changed into men's clothes purely to deliver tea to the second young master of the Xuyuan family. Now that she spoke, her voice was delicate and tender. The broker immediately recognized her gender. Gu Yundong sat in the reception room and took a sip of tea before saying, I want a man. He must be agile, honest, and strong. There's no taboo. All right. Wait a moment, Mississippi. The broker smiled and went out. After a while, she brought a row of men in. This prefectural city was different from the county city. There were many people. Gu Yundong raised her head and listened to the broker's introduction. This one used to be a stable driver. The previous owner thought that his driving was unsteady, so he sold him. This person is selling himself. He escaped from the Yongning Prefecture previously and was arranged to live in a remote village when he settled down. He really can't survive. This is... The broker described the experiences one by one, but Gu Yundong was not satisfied with them all. She was looking for someone to take care of Gu Dajiang's recuperation. Most men were careless, especially these people. Although they looked honest, they were also clumsy. Not only would they not do their job well, but they would also worsen her father's condition. Seeing that she was dissatisfied, the broker immediately waved her hand and let these people leave. Miss, what are you planning to do with the servant? To take care of a patient. After thinking for a while, Gu Yundong added, It's best if they have such an experience or used to be an apprentice in the medical hall and pharmacy. Do you have any? The broker was stunned for a moment. She thought for a moment and said, There is one. This person's original young master's body was weak all year round. He had served the young master for a few years and is a meticulous person. However, that young master's condition worsened once and he was in danger. His mother said that these servants didn't serve him well and killed 2 of them. The rest were sold. Gu Yundong raised his eyebrows. From the meaning of her words, the servants were innocent victims who took the blame. She nodded. Tell the man to come. They'll take a look. The broker quickly brought him over. He was a man in his early 20s and looked very thin and weak. There was no expression on his face. Gu Yundong asked him a few questions, but he tried his best to make it clear with the least amount of words. Gu Yundong was pleasantly surprised. Although this person was taciturn, he spoke clearly and was very organized. Moreover, he was very clear about the things to take note of when taking care of a patient. Although he was thin, he was quite strong. Him, then? The broker's face lit up. All right. Then I'll prepare the contract for you now. She was actually relieved. This person was not easy to sell. It was mainly because everyone felt that it was very unlucky that the guy had served a patient who did not end well. He had been in the brokerage for a few months, but he had not been sold. The man was also a little surprised, but he quickly calmed down. Yundong waited until they left the brokerage before asking with interest. Your name is Xue Rong, right? Who was your previous master? Xue Rong paused for a moment and answered simply, Xie family. Yundong stopped in her tracks. The Xie family? Was it the Xie family that she knew about? Chapter 461. Xie and Zhiyuan left, that's right. Yundong remembered that the eldest young master of the Xie family seemed to be in poor health all year round. So, Xue Rong had served the eldest young master of the Xie family? This was really beyond her expectations. No wonder Xue Rong looked like he had undergone professional training. His silence was probably a habit he had developed in the Xie residence. He seemed to be a cautious person. Xue Rong also raised his head slightly to look at his new master. He thought that if the other party knew that he was sold by the Xie family, she would ask him some questions or return him. But Yundong did not mention a word about the Xie family all the way to the inn. She only instructed him, You have to take care of my father. He's injured, and the doctor said that he needs to recuperate for a period of time. Since you're experienced and know how to take care of others, you must know more about what to pay attention to than I do. Well, stay in the inn for the time being. You'll share a room with my father. As for the rest, you'll slowly understand in the future. Yes, my lady. Yundong nodded and the two of them went upstairs. As she turned the corner, she glanced to the other side and saw that the two guards were still standing at the door. It seemed that they had not left. After entering the house, Tong Shui Tao immediately looked over and whispered, Miss, Master is asleep. Yundong's actions instantly softened. He introduced Xue Rong to her before bringing him to the edge of the bed. This is my father, Dajiang. I've told you about his injuries. If you have any questions, ask Shui Tao. Xue Rong agreed. Yundong looked at Dajiang again before leaving. She had to keep an eye on Xie Zhiyuan's door and see when he was leaving. She was going to retrieve the recording pen. Yundong went downstairs and asked the waiter for lunch. She ate slowly while waiting. There were a lot of people in the lobby. No one would notice her if she sat in the corner. About half an hour later, someone finally appeared at the staircase on the second floor. Yundong narrowed her eyes. As expected, she saw Xie Zhiyuan coming down with two guards. Not only them, but the middle-aged man also came down. Good. Now there's no one in the room. The middle-aged man instructed the waiter, Clean up my room. All right? The waiter replied. He instructed the other waiter to look after the customers downstairs and went to the second floor. Yundong immediately put down her chopsticks and strode after him. She went straight to the innermost room and saw that the waiter was about to bring out the teapot. He was stunned for a moment when he saw her. Miss, why are you here? I was looking for you, Yundong said as she walked inside. The waiter subconsciously asked, Why are you looking for me? He did not bother to stop Yundong from entering. Yundong leaned against the table. While the waiter was distracted by the noise downstairs, he quickly reached under the table and put the recording pen into his space. Then, she said, Didn't I buy someone? I've already brought him back. He's staying in my father's room now. I want to ask you for an extra quilt for him to use. Also, send a lunch up. That's easy. They'll send it over in a while. I'm not in a hurry. You can give it to him when you're free. With that, Yundong left with a smile. She went straight into her room and locked the door before taking out the recording pen. She turned on the switch and listened to the contents quietly. Chapter 462. Abnormal eldest young master. At first, there were some rustling sounds, but soon, the middle-aged man's voice sounded. I heard that second young master has taken a concubine? What? Uncle Wei even cares about this? Second young master, you've misunderstood. Uncle Wei is just worried that the prefecture magistrate will be unhappy. So what if he's unhappy? Do you think he'll stand up for his daughter and cause trouble for our Xine family? Xine Zhiyuan's mocking voice sounded. My father-in-law is most concerned about fame and profit. Although the Xine family is his in-law, the interests of the two families are already closely linked. What he values is the Xine family. What's a daughter? Uncle Wei sighed. In the end, it's not good to go too far. After all, we've slapped his face. He values the interests of the Xine family, but the second young master isn't the only master of the Xine family. Although eldest young master's body is weak, would the prefecture magistrate like him? He's a man with a strange heart. He listened to my mother's nonsense and brought those boys and girls back, hoping to make himself better. Look at how many evil deeds he's done. His hands are stained with so much blood. He's much more disgusting than me. The prefecture magistrate must hate him. Otherwise, why would he marry his daughter to me? Yundong suddenly stood up and almost knocked over the stool behind her. She gripped the recording pen in her hand tightly. What did Xine Zhiyuan just say? Boys and girls? Stained with blood? This eldest young master and that madam were actually not good people. These people from the Xine family were simply a nest of dirty rats. They stank all over, and the disgusting feeling emanating from their bones made Yundong especially uncomfortable. She took a deep, slow breath and had a sip of water before she continued to play. Uncle Wei's anxious voice came from inside. Second young master, be careful with your words. You can't spread these words around. Otherwise, not only will your brother's reputation be ruined, but the entire Xine family will also be criticized. At that time, the one who will suffer the greatest loss will still be second young master. All right, I won't say anything. Okay? Xine Zhiyuan seemed to be very impatient with Uncle Wei's teaching. However, the two of them seemed to have a good relationship. Uncle Wei should be a servant of the Xine family. Yundong had also seen with her own eyes how respectful he was to Xine Zhiyuan. However, when they spoke now, there was a hint of intimacy and familiarity between the two of them. Xine Zhiyuan at least treated him as half an elder. Yundong memorized Uncle Wei before continuing to listen. It was still Xine Zhiyuan who spoke. That trivial matter in our family is not worth talking about. Did you have any good news when you came back this time? Uncle Wei sighed. Everyone in the capital has already arranged for it. Those people took the money but didn't do anything. They know that the late emperor has died. Our Xine family isn't as popular as before, so all of them are shirking it. So you didn't get the sugar deal? White sugar is a business of the imperial court. The emperor can give it to whoever he wants. If the late emperor was still around, the white sugar business of Wanqing Prefecture would definitely belong to the Xine family. However, the current emperor values the Duan family more. The Duan family's momentum has not decreased in the past 2 years. If our Xine family did not have a good relationship with the prefecture magistrate, we would probably be trampled under the feet of the Duan family. However, the officials of the Xine family who were on good terms with the capital in the past are not related to the white sugar business. Moreover, the production of white sugar is limited. Every prefectural city won't obtain much. Xine Zhiyuan seemed to have stood up. Then should we give up on the sugar business? Not really. Actually, I also heard another piece of news this time. What? Chapter 463. Targeting the Gu family. It said that this method of making white sugar was developed by a farming family in the Xuanhe Prefecture. Later on, they offered it to the imperial court. However, that farming family had always been making sugar and trading it. Therefore, the imperial court no longer found anyone to sell white sugar in the Xuanhe Prefecture. A farmer. Xine Zhiyuan's voice was instantly filled with excitement. Yundong suddenly frowned. Were they talking about her family? F***CK. She was actually targeted. Wanqing, you big idiot, you have to stop them. Uncle Wei's voice sounded again. That's right. Unfortunately, we can't interfere with the Xuanhe Prefecture. That prefecture magistrate Dai is not an ordinary person. Why can't we? It's not like we're going to take root in the Xine family and do business. Let's go to that farmer in secret and ask him to hand over the secret recipe for making sugar. We'll give him some benefits later. Won't everyone be happy? Uncle Wei said helplessly. So what if we obtain the secret recipe to make sugar? Do you dare to make it in private and sell it? Now, the business of white sugar is controlled by the imperial court. If the emperor finds out, the Xie family will not be in a good state. Xie Zhiyuan snorted coldly. Then, there was a hint of ruthlessness in his voice. Who said that I would sell it in Wanqing Prefecture? Only the Duan family will take a fancy to a small prefectural city's business. Second young master, you mean? If Dajiang doesn't allow us to sell it, what about Lu country? What about Cheng country? They must be coveting this white sugar, right? Uncle Wei took a deep breath. Young master, do you know what you're talking about? The imperial court has white sugar. They can hold their heads high in front of other countries. If others want this white sugar, they have to beg the current emperor. If you do business with them, it won't be bad. The emperor will skin you alive. If we don't do business with them, are you really going to watch the Duan family step on our heads? Aye, but that won't do either. This isn't the time of the late emperor. Even if we have any connections with those two countries, we won't be discovered. The late emperor was muddle-headed. The current emperor is very shrewd. Xie Zhiyuan was a little unwilling. It can be less. That won't do either. Second young master, you should give up on this idea as soon as possible, Uncle Wei said. He probably realized that his tone was too cold, so he softened his tone. Second young master, be more patient. Why don't you wait for a while and see what the emperor thinks? If he really agrees to the Duan family, it won't be too late for us to take action. Uncle Wei continued. As for the white sugar, we can do as second young master said and go to that farmer to get the secret recipe first. Leave this matter to me. You can wait for news in the residence. All right. Xie Zhiyuan was still a little unwilling. Uncle Wei sighed and reiterated, don't contact those two countries. Wait for me to come back. I know. Xie Zhiyuan was impatient. Then, Uncle Wei, when are you leaving? In a few days. I just returned to Wanqing Prefecture. I still have to tell your father about the situation. Then you can stay in the residence for the next few days. How can this compare to the residence? No need. It's convenient to stay here. I'm used to it. That was the end of the conversation. However, Gu Yundong's expression was as dark as water. She had thought that the three scumbags from the Xie family had caused her father to become like this. It was enough for her to settle scores with them. Unexpectedly, they had their eyes on her white sugar, trying to force them to hand over the secret recipe. Gu Yundong sneered. In your dream. Chapter 464. Writing a letter Xie family. Gu Yundong's fingers tapped lightly on the table, and she put the recording pen back into her spatial storage. She would definitely not let the Xie family off. After all, even if she did not mind, the Xie family would still force her to hand over the secret recipe of the white sugar. Thus, she might as well make the first move. It was just that Gu Yundong was only a little farm girl in Yongfu village who had yet to reach adulthood. She only had more than 100 acres of land and a workshop. Compared to her, the Xie family was a colossus. Fortunately, the Xie family was courting death. Gu Yundong sneered. She took out a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone and began to write a letter in detail. In the letter to Qingyuan, not only did she say that the Xie family and the Wanqing family were colluding, but she also said that many young masters of the Xie family were looking for boys and girls. Of course, the most important thing was that the Xie family had many connections with the other two countries. She didn't mention anything about Gu Dajiang being beaten up. However, after thinking about it, she still had to talk about how the Xie family coveted her sugar and wanted to force her to hand over the secret recipe. After all, in Qin Wenzheng's heart, Gu Yundong was not a busybody. Last time, she had warned him not to implicate her family in these dangers. How long had it been? Why would he take the initiative to write to him just because he knew about the messy situation in the Xie family? After writing this, she also analyzed the benefits that the imperial court would obtain after destroying the Xie family. The Xie family was currently dissatisfied with the fact that the imperial court valued the Duan family. They might secretly play tricks. Moreover, their family was rich. Didn't the imperial court lack money? This was delivered to the door. Coupled with getting rid of evil in name, it was killing two birds with one stone. When he was done, Yundong took it and blew on it to dry the handwriting. It was just that the delivery of this letter was troublesome. The relay station usually sent messages to the officials, and she did not have a messenger pigeon. The journey of the civilians to send messages was slow and unreliable. If such an important letter was lost, it would be fatal. Yundong thought for a long time and suddenly stopped tapping the table. She had an idea. After folding the letter in her hand, Yundong stood up and was about to leave when she realized that it was getting dark outside. Yundong frowned. Just then, there was a knock on the door, followed by Tong Xuetao's voice. "Mississippi, come in." Tong Xuetao entered with a tray. "Miss, have dinner first." Yundong rubbed her temples. Unknowingly, it was already so late. It seemed that she could only go out tomorrow. She placed the letter into her spatial storage. "How's my father? Master woke up once and found out that you were the one who hired Brother Xue to serve him. He even asked where you were. When he found out that Miss was busy, he didn't say anything. After taking the medicine, he fell asleep again." Tong Xuetao answered as she placed the food on the table. Yundong nodded. The medicine prescribed by Dr. Yu had the effect of calming the mind and helping him sleep. Dajiang needed more rest now. Moreover, she had heard from Grandpa Yu that her father worked day and night to find them and had very little time to rest. Just the day before she met him, he had snuck into the Xie family and did not sleep for the entire night. Now it was a good time for him to recuperate. After dinner, Yundong went to Dajiang's room to take a look before returning to rest. The next morning, she got up and prepared to go out with the letter she had written yesterday. Unexpectedly, as soon as she opened the door, she saw Xue Rong coming out from next door. Moreover, it seemed like he was going out. Chapter 465. Old Father's heart when he saw Yundong. Xue Rong greeted her respectfully. Yundong asked, "Where are you going so early in the morning?" Replying to young Miss, old master instructed me to go to the Yu family and bring his clothes over. Yundong waved his hand. "Don't go yet." As she spoke, she entered the house. Dajiang had woken up and was lying on his side. His eyes were staring straight ahead, and no one knew what he was thinking. When he saw Yundong, a trace of joy flashed across his face. "Yundong is here? Father." Yundong sat on the edge of the bed. Seeing that he was in good spirits, she relaxed slightly. "Let Xue Rong take care of you here. He'll go to Grandpa Yes' house." "Sigh, let A Rong go." "A Rong?" Yundong raised his eyebrows and turned to look at Xue Rong. She wouldn't have known while this person was quiet in just half a day. He made Tong Xuetao call him Brother Xue and her father called him A Rong. Xue Rong pursed his lips. He still looked the same, quiet and obedient. Yundong smiled and turned to Dajiang. "Father, I originally planned to go to Grandpa Yes' house. I happened to have something to ask him for help with. Besides, they took good care of you some time ago. Logically speaking, I should go over personally to thank them." "Yes, you should indeed thank them," Dajiang agreed. Then he frowned. "But you don't know that the people living near the Yu family are very messy. It's not safe for a girl like you to go over. How about this? Let A Rong accompany you. I'm already much better today. It's fine without him taking care of me." "Father, I can go alone." "No, I'm worried. Why don't you let A Rong accompany you? Or let A Rong go on your behalf?" Yundong choked. Along the way, she had always made her own decisions. But now, facing her father who cared about her, there were some things that she could not refuse. Sighing, Yundong could only nod. "All right, I'll get Xue Rong to accompany me." Dajiang revealed a smile. "It's a pity that father is injured. Otherwise, father would have accompanied you. I may not be back in a while." To ease her father, Yundong could only bring Xue Rong along. Before leaving, he instructed Tong Xuetao to take care of her father. In a while, Dr. Yu would come over to change his bandage. If there was anything else he needed help with, he would call the waiter. Tong Xuetao was still a little resentful as she glared fiercely at Xue Rong. To think that she had called him Brother Xue yesterday. She did not expect him to fight for Miss Favor the moment he arrived. Miss did not even bring her along when she went out. Xue Rong was stunned for a moment, but he did not say anything and quickly followed. Yundong specially went to buy some things before heading to the Yu residence. They drove the carriage there. The road was a little long, but the carriage stopped at the entrance of the alley. It was not easy to ride inside. It was still the same alley, and those sizing gazes. Yundong did not care, but Xue Rong frowned slightly. He followed Yundong cautiously, glancing left and right from time to time. When he saw a few young men with sloppy gazes that revealed greed, Xue Rong's heart could not help but thump. Fortunately, not long after, they entered the Yu family. There were people in the Yu family, so the courtyard door was open. Yundong had just walked in, but before she could make a sound, an unfamiliar voice came from inside. "Old Yu, why don't you go out and find work these 2 days? I'm afraid that there won't be anyone at home when Dajiang comes back. He'll rest for 2 days. Anyway, I won't be able to find any work," Uncle Yu said with a smile. Unexpectedly, the other party sneered. "He probably won't come back, right?" Chapter 466. Grandpa Zhang next door. Grandpa Yu was unhappy. "What do you mean? Didn't you say that his daughter came looking for him? She's quite rich. The person who came the afternoon before yesterday was his daughter's maidservant, right? She even used a maidservant. Dajiang must have followed his daughter to enjoy life. How could he still remember his poor friend here? Don't talk nonsense." "How am I spouting nonsense? Otherwise, why didn't Dajiang come to see you after a few days? He might be enjoying himself now and have long forgotten about your family. You're the only one who's still waiting at home." Grandpa Yes' voice was filled with anger. "I know Dajiang better than you. He must have been delayed by something. Don't spout nonsense here. I'm busy. Go back to your house." "Hey, why are you... Grandpa Yu, are you home?" Yundong suddenly shouted. Grandpa Yu was stunned. He quickly put down the basket he was weaving and came out happily. "Yundong, you're here?" He looked behind her. Although he saw a man, it wasn't Dajiang. He was immediately puzzled. As Yundong walked inside, he explained, "My father didn't come. Actually, when I met him 2 days ago, he was seriously ill and has been recuperating in bed for the past 2 days. 2 days ago, Xuetao came over. I specially asked her not to say anything, afraid that you would be worried." As she spoke, she had already seen the people in the room. It was a man who was slightly younger than Grandpa Yu. When he heard his words, he smiled awkwardly. Yundong did not look at him. She just asked Xue Rong to put the things he had bought on the table. "Grandpa Yu, this is food bought on the street. My father specially instructed me to buy it. He wanted to come too, but the doctor instructed him to rest more and come back after he recovers." When Grandpa Yu heard that Dajiang was sick, he became anxious and didn't even look at the things on the table. On the other hand, the other person in the room kept looking sideways. He even swallowed his saliva and wanted to know what was inside. "Why is your father sick? What illness is he suffering from?" "I'll go see him," Grandpa Yu asked nervously. He knew that Dajiang must have been delayed. Yundong smiled and helped him sit down. "I'm fine. He's already seen a doctor. He just caught a cold. It's not good for him to go out again. You shouldn't go. If he passes it to you, my father will feel uneasy." Grandpa Yu thought about it and agreed. "Your father is sick. Don't come over. It's more important to take care of your father." "I must come and take a look." As Yundong spoke, she glanced at the table where the gift box was placed. Seeing that the stranger was getting closer and closer, she could not help but twitch her lips. She asked, "This is..." Grandpa Yu seemed to have just remembered that there was another person at home. He immediately patted his head and said, "It's Grandpa Zhang next door." Grandpa Zhang forced a bright smile at Yundong. "You must be Dajiang's daughter. You're really good-looking, polite, and filial. I'm your Grandpa Zhang from the family on the left. Your father and I have known each other for a long time. He's been suffering and has been looking for you. This time he's sick. You have to take good care of him. It's not easy for him. It's really not easy. Unfortunately, I don't have much ability to help him." He even wiped his eyes as he spoke, looking very sad. Yundong was speechless.